It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here. We can't believe it. Microsoft and Sony in bed together. Windows 1903 is out, and the Chredge watch is on. It's on. No, there's no Chredge watch. There's that. No. It's time for Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 622, recorded Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. Hello, Cleveland. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Thinkst Canary. Detect attackers on your network with honeypots that can be deployed in minutes. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. And by Atlassian. Atlassian software powers the full spectrum of collaboration between IT teams and the rest of your organization. Visit Atlassian.com/IT to see what IT can be by giving their products a try for free. And by Behind the Tech, a podcast with Microsoft's CTO, Kevin Scott. He talks with tech heroes, interesting people, and folk who have made our modern world possible. Subscribe to Behind the Tech where you listen to podcasts today. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that covers the latest news from Microsoft with our esteemed Microsoft watchers, Mary Jo Foley from ZDNet. Her blog, allaboutmicrosoft.com, is all about Microsoft, oddly enough.
So it's not just a witty name.
It's not just a witty name. It's truth to power. Paul Thurrott is at Thurrott.com. Oddly, coincidentally, his last name. So I could say...
it's all about me, baby.
I could say the eponymous Thurrott.com.
You could.
And then that would send people dashing to their Merriam-Webster's. What the hell did he just say? Paul is also a published author. And... and you'll find his books at leanpub.com. I just paused for dramatic effect.
It was good.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Hello. Hello,
There's
boys and girls.
Funny.
Nothing. Paul, where are you? You're in a attractive locale.
No. With outside I am. And inside, as you can see, it's your basic Best Western, which I assume is a playful turn of phrase. I guess there's nothing in here that is the best of anything.
I like the towel over the lamp, Paul.
Yeah.
It gives it that romantic feel.
It's too bright, Leo.
He is in Miami. What, you said you're in Miami for what?
Yeah, for VMon. It's a industry trade show. Virtualization solutions and whatnot.
Are you speaking?
No, we are just, we have a booth at the show, and we're doing interviews with folks who are there. Yeah.
Nice. Fun. So coverage will be on Thurrott.com.
No, actually, that will be on Petri.com.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so I covered the keynote yesterday, covered the Windows Server release. Brad's got some videos up.
I know how much you love enterprise computing, so this must be, you're just in hog heaven, aren't you?
You know, Leo, it's like riding a bike.
Where you fall off and get your shins scraped?
Yes.
Yes,
into
just
a
like
wall.
that, into a wall. There's some really interesting Microsoft news.
Yeah, there is.
In a lot of different ways, but I think the one that stunned me this week was the announcement that Microsoft and Sony are going to work together.
Right.
Hereditary enemies.
This also apparently stunned the PlayStation team, who had never heard this was happening.
Yep.
So this was the president of Sony saying we're going to use Azure for PlayStation networking?
Well,
Azure, PlayStation gaming service.
Maybe.
Whatever it may be. Yeah.
Right? It was so vaguely worded, this whole thing. And that might just be legal mumbo-jumbo, right? But
honestly, it wasn't as bad. My first pass, I was like, okay, wait a minute. What did they announce exactly? And then I kind of went through it again. I was like, well, actually, it's not too bad. I think the problem is at this point, at this juncture, they don't really have a thing they can announce, like PlayStation, blah, 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 whatever, running on Azure. But I'd be shocked if this didn't pan out the way they described it.
When I read it, I thought it either means Sony is going to use xCloud as their game streaming service, or it means Sony is building its own game streaming service that's going to use Azure. as the
it's
hosting
the
platform.
It's
it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so this goes to the heart of what. Sorry.
No xCloud.
What is xCloud?
Well, no. So xCloud is Microsoft's service, right?
Right.
It's not their game.
It's
not their game. It's a game service for Xbox.
But it's basically the streaming version of Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not out yet, but they've announced it.
Yeah.
And
right.
Why would Sony? I mean, it's the competitor to Sony's own streaming service.
But in the course of developing Azure, one of the many things they did was knowing that they'd be working on this game stuff, is they created workloads that are specific for video gaming, and those things can be used by any third party. So the interesting thing about this is I never suspected that Sony would turn to Microsoft for some reason. I always thought of it like, you're a publisher like Activision or a smaller game maker, whoever you may be. Obviously, you could turn to Microsoft and use their back-end services for your own service. I thought the big play for them was going to be Nintendo, because Nintendo has almost no
they need it
scalable online service type stuff, and so it would make
sense.
But
there are rumors about Nintendo and Microsoft, right?
Oh yeah, I know, and that makes sense to me. I will say, just to put a little asterisk on this story, there is no way that Sony would only use Microsoft for their coming game service, right? In the sense that any hyper-scalable cloud service of the future will want to have at least two providers in case one goes down, or because certain things work better in certain areas, whatever it might be. You can expect Sony to sign up with AWS in the future or somebody else. I think that's the one thing we have to kind of keep in perspective here. They're almost certainly not only going to use Microsoft's infrastructure.
What does PlayStation Network use right now? Do we know?
That's what I wondered too. Do they use their own cloud?
I can't imagine that they do. But, the way to think about this is Sony today has a game streaming service called PlayStation Now. And they have some number of games. Actually, they have hundreds of games. They have a lot more games in that service than Microsoft has in Xbox Game Pass. But the percentage of PlayStation users today who are actually streaming games over that service compared to PlayStation gamers who are downloading games and playing them on the machine directly or putting a disc in the drive and playing it that way has got to be tiny, 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 right? But when you look at the future of gaming, as Microsoft, Sony, Google, also Amazon really, and probably others envision it, to actually stream games to some majority of gamers, which I think is where this is heading, you need an infrastructure size that's much, much bigger than anything Sony has. And I think what they realize is they have to partner with some others, and it will be others, not other, to make that happen. It's not something they have to worry about for 2019 or 2020 or whatever. It's there'll be future Sony consoles. The mix will come and go. It will work a lot like it did with digital music. In the beginning when iTunes came out, Steve Jobs said nobody wants to rent music or whatever. Well, you know what? Today they do, and I think that's how gaming is going to go as well.
Yeah, I think
I
completely agree.
But, Amazon's building its own game streaming service, everybody believes, right? And Google has one or is building one, and Microsoft has one. So it's not like they're picking Azure because they're the only one that's not a competitor or is a competitor. It's like everybody's going to have a service.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there are two sides to this, right? So Google has a service called Stadia or whatever, right? Stadia, I think is the name of it. That's Google's service, right? There's no concept yet of some other company licensing Stadia, right? Although maybe that happens, I don't know. But right now, that's just the Google service. Right. Google also has back-end infrastructure that they sell to other companies, just like Amazon does, just like Microsoft does. They just happen to be a little smaller, but they do have it. Yeah. And they talk about the reach of all that and everything. So Activision or Nintendo or Sony or whoever could use them, maybe use them with other companies, whatever. It doesn't mean they're using Stadia. I think we got to be careful about what we're comparing here. I mean, they're using Google's back-end infrastructure. And that's what Sony is doing with Azure, or looking at doing, I guess. I always thought that one of the big advantages that Microsoft had was that they could kind of win by losing in this coming generation of streaming, because if they're getting the money on the back end from other services, who cares if xCloud is number 2 or number 3 in the market? They could still end up making more money, more profits, more revenues, whatever. if enough other companies license their Azure technologies, right? Well, now you've got the number one player in video games announcing a deal, which is why this is such a big deal. What if Sony won, if that, whatever that means, the cloud streaming market, just like they've won the console generation today, but they had to use Azure to do it, right? I mean, this is like Microsoft winning by losing. It's kind of interesting.
So let me throw out another question, and I'm just showing my gaming ignorance.
Okay.
Oops. Wait a minute.
If you paid attention during the Xbox segment every week, Mary Jo.
Sound.
She's disappeared from the ether. She unplugged her. So, I hear you.
I lost my sound for a second.
Yeah, we hear you. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when Microsoft has said xCloud is going to be a cross-platform gaming service, do you think they could mean as much as, and it would work on Sony consoles?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming that Sony allowed that. Yeah.
Right. So that's what made me think this announcement might have two parts, like the xCloud part and then just the pure Azure part, right? But the way that announcement was worded was so vague. Well, it was like they're exploring opportunities. Right?
Yeah, they specifically called it Azure, right? Which to me says it's not. They never said anything about xCloud. No. That's a different discussion in a way. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it absolutely could happen, right? So Microsoft has some standalone service called xCloud. We know it's going to work on mobile. We know it's going to work on Windows. We know it's going to work on Xbox. Probably at some time it's going to make sense for this thing to work on smart TVs, to work on Rokus and Apple TVs, Sony PlayStation 5 or whatever they call the next console. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, today you don't see Xbox on Sony. You don't see Sony games on Xbox, et cetera, et cetera. But, this is the new open Microsoft. And Sony, I mean, I don't know if people understand how big of a deal this is, aside from the obvious. Sony is the company that blocked crossplay, right? On I don't know, on Minecraft and on other games in recent years. I mean, this is kind of an interesting thing. I suppose I could imagine Sony saying, look, we don't want xCloud on PlayStation, but we still want to use Azure for the backend. And that would be acceptable to Microsoft. That's still a net win for Microsoft.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I guess we're just kind of reading the tea leaves because they've said.
We are. We're just trying to read into what the thing said, because it was pretty vague. When I saw this last week, I immediately said to Paul, I wonder if this was supposed to be a build announcement.
Oh, by the way, as soon as you said that, I completely agree. And the reason is, remember they talked about the 4 clouds, right? And gaming was one of them, and they had nothing to show for it. And that was really weird because when I read that, I thought, wow, they really think xCloud's going to be a bigger deal than I would have imagined. And that's not what that means, right? I mean, it doesn't mean they don't think xCloud won't be big, but when you put Sony in the equation, that becomes part of their gaming cloud in a way, right? They're servicing these giant gaming engines from other companies.
So is this just a partner announcement, really?
It's a customer win announcement, right? That's how I looked at it
really
in a way.
It's don't read too much
don't underplay it, but it's Sony, right? I mean, in other words,
I know. No, it's big.
If Bethesda Software said, "Hey, we're going to have an online service and it's going to run on Azure and like the next version of Doom, if you want to play it online, that's one of the ways you can do it." And that would be cool. That's cool.
But it fits.
Actually, Bethesda was on the Sony thing, but I mean
the Microsoft agnostic kind of.
Yes, it does.
They want. Nadella's trying to position them as above the power, the competition, OS competition, and all that. We serve everyone equally.
It also slots into the direction for the company where we keep talking about how the future is Azure. We always say this. You look at the financials today, and it's like it's not all Azure, obviously, but they're kind of heading in that direction. And this neatly puts gaming in that direction and very fully, and in a much bigger way than just the future of Xbox Live is on Azure. It's great. I mean, there's only some tens of millions of people who are doing that. There's only some single-digit millions that are doing Xbox Game Pass today. We're not talking about a giant scalable thing like you would see with Azure more broadly. It's just not hundreds of millions or billion users. It's not. But if you can get Sony on there, if you can get other third parties on there, gaming is humongous. Gaming is bigger than Hollywood movies, right? It's like it's one of the biggest entertainment markets in the world. Microsoft's not going to have all of it.
Is this analogous to? Nobody ever wanted to admit it. I'm sure Microsoft would love to announce it, but Apple's iCloud ran on Azure.
It did, in part.
We knew that.
Yeah, I was going to say, but not fully, right? And that's the point. In other words, you never want to rely on one provider for something.
Well, most people are multi-cloud these days, right?
Yes.
This is a very common.
Yep.
I know this because when I was at the Thousand Eyes event, it was a sponsor of ours, but they talked a lot about this. That what people are often trying to figure out is how I can do multi-home cloud that way. So I'm not relying on anyone.
It's just like look, this is big for us. We cover Microsoft for a living, so this is a big deal. But, this is a lot like that PWA conversation. You download an app for the store and you never think like, oh, I wonder if this was written in C++, or I wonder if this was a web app. Like
you shouldn't have
normal
to
people
care.
don't. Yeah.
You shouldn't have
if you're some gamer and you're in Connecticut or Utah or Africa or wherever you are and you're playing your game and, something in the back, some data center goes off site or offline or whatever, and wherever it is, you don't have to think about that stuff. You don't care if you're running on AWS or Azure or whatever. You're just playing the game, and that's what this is. They're providing electricity.
And it's not really a capitulation by Sony, or is it? And no, they're not saying, well, what we were doing didn't work, so we're going to go to Microsoft.
No, they don't have. How could they possibly?
We don't know what they were
deploy
doing.
infrastructure.
We don't know
like
what they were
this
doing, right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, really.
Yeah, we know they're not always. Well, I've never seen them listed in the top 10 cloud vendors list of any kind.
Yeah,
right. I mean, they may have their own data centers that have been running their gaming cloud service, right? But
you know what this is a little bit like is the new Edge, right? Microsoft would describe it as, look, we took all the great stuff from Chrome, stripped out all the Google garbage, and we're going to build the best browser. We think we're going to have the best browser. If you look at what Sony said about this agreement, they said we're going to use Microsoft's cloud, and we're going to build the best entertainment service in the world on top of it. So they're going to do their own thing.
It would be foolish to assume that they're going to use xCloud or support xCloud or anything.
I don't think that's even a thing.
That's a separate deal.
I could be completely wrong.
It could be a separate deal.
Yeah. I mean, it could happen or it could not happen, but it's not tied to this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't say anything about xCloud.
Right.
It's just another partner win. It's just another
it is, but a huge one. And there was another part of it that we didn't touch on, which is they also announced an alliance so that Microsoft Azure AI technologies are going to somehow work with Sony image sensors in consumer products. But they don't say, which products, how that's going to work.
Well, it would be Windows Hello, right?
Well, it could be a future VR type thing. It could be. It could be anything. Look, they make phones, which
TVs,
a lot of people think.
Right?
Yep. I mean, it could be all kinds of things.
Well, Sony's sensors are in most phones, including the iPhone. I mean, they're the number one camera sensor out there.
So maybe this is going to be. Actually, you said Windows Hello. I think that's pretty smart. Somebody walks into a room, the TV or the console or the service, whatever, recognizes them. They get their customized content.
It's not like Microsoft makes a phone, so it wouldn't be that kind of relationship.
Too soon, Leo. Too
Painful. Painful subject. And this is not like Google saying, oh, yeah, we're giving up on the cloud. We're going to use Azure. This is a company that doesn't really have a cloud presence of any kind. We don't know.
That's the point, yeah.
It might be like Facebook. It might be like Facebook saying, we're going to use Azure. That would be a big victory. I mean, Facebook runs their own network, as far as I know. They don't use anybody else's cloud, but...
Right.
Look, Sony is going to always be competitive in video gaming. They probably, I mean, look, if there's no reason to believe they're not
Windows laptops too. I mean, they're partners in other.
Actually, no, they don't.
They used to.
Sold
they don't.
Yeah.
They sold
really?
Bio, remember?
Yeah.
But they used to. So I mean, it's not like they're enemies in every way. They're friends.
I don't even think they're enemies per se. I mean, obviously they compete, but
that's right.
I don't.
That's a kind of. That's a naive way to look at business, is to say, oh, this is an enemy, this is a competitor, this is a friend. That's like a different scale operating on a different scale.
Right.
That's operating on a personal scale as opposed to a business scale.
Right.
I mean,
I feel like we attribute sometimes these kind of things because we think, oh, they must be an enemy, right? Like Salesforce, they must hate Microsoft, right?
They're not humans.
Well, actually, I think Salesforce does hate Microsoft.
I think Mark Benioff.
It'd be fair to say Mark Benioff does, but that doesn't speak. He doesn't.
It doesn't mean the company does.
That's right.
Necessarily.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe we're reading a little too much into this. Because
well, no, it's still a big deal because
it is.
It's not Sony is licensing Azure for use in their something department, TVs or something. I mean, they're literally licensing Azure for video games, and that's the reason it's interesting is because both companies compete in that market. Today, Sony is wiping the floor with Microsoft, but I've been saying this for a while, a couple of years now. Microsoft's strength in cloud computing is going to give it a leg up in this coming generation of streaming. How does Sony respond to that? I mean, in a way that I didn't see coming. It was like a little twist-ending Game of Thrones thing there. I don't know. I don't think anyone would have predicted this. I don't believe anyone did.
Apple uses Sony camera parts. Samsung uses Sony camera parts. Apple uses Samsung memory in its. This is called business.
It is. Yep.
And it's not like humans where, I don't like my neighbor and I'll be damned if I'll borrow his chainsaw.
Sure. Well, if you did, that could get ugly.
Yeah. It's just not, it's a different, it's a different world.
It is. And people are more, companies like at that level, they're more practical, right? It's like, we're going to get money out of this? Yeah, let's do it.
In fact, it's always embarrassing when you see something like Steve Jobs saying, I'm going to kill Google. Like, that's more like a monarch talking than a business person talking.
Right.
It's a naive way to think about business. It's not personal. It's never personal.
It makes it more fun to write it that way. It's a
lot more fun to act like it's the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it does.
It's not.
We don't get a lot of good big tech throwdowns. It's the Godzilla versus King Kong thing. Like, it really doesn't happen that much.
There's no good story. Yeah, that's right. It's no good story. It's a much better story.
Every once in a while.
When Steve Jobs says, I'm going to flatten Google. That's or Mark Benioff says that Microsoft sucks. That's a big story, but it's not the truth. It's not really a true story. It's something we humans like. We like that kind of contest. So I'm sorry I deflated this whole subject.
No, it's true. It's a big story. There's no way around it, and we'll see how it pans out. But again, the first thought that went through my head is, my God, I never saw anything like this coming. And my second thought was, they're not going to just use Microsoft.
No. And what was weird about how they announced this? I don't think they pre-briefed anyone at all. And when everybody saw this cross the wire, we were all like, wait, what? And it just, I remember I sent you a message and I'm like, did you just see this thing right here? Like, what?
Yeah.
By the way,
it was like a Thursday afternoon. It wasn't like 9 a.m. or anything.
It was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So you think there was some hitch that kept them from announcing it at Build?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Because think if they had done that. He gets on stage at Build and he's like, oh, by the way, we're doing this deal with Sony for Azure.
Okay. I mean, actually, if you want to further humanize the story a little bit, I mean, from Sony's perspective, do you want Microsoft to be able to crow about this at their annual development event when they're getting a bunch of press? Here's an idea. Send out a sleepy little update on a Thursday afternoon when no one's paying attention. And then it's more of a partnership thing, not Microsoft declaring victory and getting like a thunderous ovation from the crowd.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's what happened, but it certainly would make some sense.
And no Sony executive wants to get on stage at a Microsoft event, probably.
Although, I don't know. Eric Sweeney got on stage.
That was a shock. Tim Sweeney.
Right?
Yeah, that was a shock.
Right, Tim Sweeney.
That was like, what the what?
I know.
This is the new Microsoft, man, burying hatchets everywhere they go.
Yeah, maybe Philippe Kahn could get on stage at the next event. And
I honestly think that Satya Nadella is cultivating this. That this is part of the signaling that this is the new Microsoft. We don't have enemies. We only have customers. I think that's.
I think he's very practical, right?
Yes.
More than Ballmer or Gates.
Ballmer, you could see Ballmer fuming and saying, "Never over my dead body."
And Gates. Oh man,
Gates
you could see him just going.
Don't forget, he's like this kindly old philanthropist now.
Now
People forget that guy was a shark.
Yeah.
He was.
He's like Andrew Carnegie. He's completely rejuvenated his, renovated his persona.
No, it's crazy how he is like turned around. I mean, it's to the point where I think if you tried to describe how bad Gates was to people, they wouldn't even believe it.
No, people don't. Like when you tell stories, they're like, "Oh, come on." I'm like, "No, really."
Uncle Bill? No. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a nice guy now.
Mosquitoes and poop.
But yeah. By the way, am I reading this right? A $38 billion deal? The Sony
I didn't see any number attached to it.
Okay.
See a number. I don't remember.
Did you, Leo? Somewhere?
I thought I did, but I might have. Let me go back and look.
It probably was a huge deal. If it's again because of the way it's worded. It's like they're exploring opportunities, blah blah blah. So you don't know how much of it actually has been settled.
Right. Oh no,
point.
that number. This is from Bloomberg. That number comes from the size of the video game console market. So that's the pot they're splitting, with the lion's share going to Sony, I might add. But it could be billions of dollars. I mean, clearly,
sure.
Right? They didn't not make.
Over time, this could be humongous, assuming it all pans out. Sure.
I think it's also the case that no Sony CEO is going to get on stage at Build, because that would send a whole different message.
But hold on. Let me compare this to Edge again, because for some reason this just keeps popping in my head. Remember where everyone was freaking out? Oh, Microsoft's conceded the web. They've conceded to Google. And, I kind of made the argument, I think you guys agree, that, they're standardizing on the part of the web that makes sense to standardize, because doing otherwise makes it really hard for developers, or it causes developers to ignore your platform because you have such low market share. Microsoft's job was to innovate on top of that. And they're going to try to make the best browser they can make, and we can decide if we believe that's true or whatever. But to me, that always made kind of sense. I mean, this isn't Sony capitulating to anything. This is Sony, needing the scale to enter this new phase of video gaming, and building that infrastructure out themselves would be prohibitively complex and expensive.
It is a capitulation in the sense that they say, well, we aren't going to be able to do it. So,
but that's not what they do. Sony makes refrigerators and VCRs.
Yeah. It also, I think you're right. It is. I think it's also an acknowledgement that they're both worried about Stadia, which they shouldn't be, in my opinion. But they're both worried about Google.
Both worried about AWS, right?
And Amazon. You should worry about Amazon. Yeah.
Right. I think if you're Sony and you're looking at who competes with us more head to head, and you look at all the stuff Amazon's doing around content, you can make a case like,
All right, I'm going to make a third stab at this. I think I finally got it. What this is the video game version of enterprises moving to the cloud.
Yes.
We've had this thing for years and years where these companies have created these huge infrastructures to support email and file sharing and all this stuff. And it's like, guys, our company makes widgets. Why are we making such a huge part of a company this other thing? Let's go to the cloud. It will be cheaper. We'll let the experts handle it. We can sell our widgets. That's exactly what Sony's doing.
By the way, though,
it's going from on-prem to cloud.
According to Bloomberg, the PlayStation Network is hosted on AWS.
Yeah, like I said, I expect Sony to split between, so probably with AWS, I guess.
Bloomberg, interestingly, this is Yuji Nakamura and Dina Bass, writes that Sony and Amazon could not reach an agreement. Yeah, let me get this exactly right.
Oh, I haven't seen this story.
It's Sony and Amazon. Yeah, I think so. Sony and Amazon held talks last year for deeper collaboration on cloud gaming, but couldn't agree on commercial terms, according to a person familiar with the matter. Boy, he gets around, doesn't he? That led to Sony's discussion with Microsoft. The person said, Amazon, as we know, is developing its own cloud gaming.
Wouldn't it be interesting if the corporate culture of Amazon was still so predatory that because they want in on this market, they refuse to talk to Sony? It's almost like, I'm going to keep doing this all day, I don't know why, like when IBM went to digital research and the guy didn't show up and they went back to Microsoft and Microsoft said, screw it, we'll make an operating system. It's like, for some reason, Amazon sees the future of this and thinks they have a big play, and maybe they said, no, we're not going to help Sony beat us.
Or they just bid them against each other. Or they said, okay, Amazon, how much are you going to charge us to do this?
Very simple.
Microsoft, here's what Amazon said. Want to beat their deal?
I like Paul's theory, though, that Amazon says, we're getting into this business, so screw you, Sony.
They are, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the information says they are. The other thing is cloud gaming is still a tiny, tiny market compared to console gaming.
Yeah.
And I don't think this means that Microsoft and Sony are not going head-to-head in the console gaming.
Oh, no, there's still going to be more consoles. But again, don't be really careful about discounting this stuff because, and I don't mean you, Lou, I mean people in general. Music streaming wasn't a big thing.
True.
And now digital music I guess it's streaming music is the number one way that people acquire music. So these things change. And
this is Sony hedging its bet, saying, well, right now it's a fraction of the market, but should the console thing come to an end, we want to be well positioned. When
the console thing will come to an end. I agree with you. Absolutely will. Yeah, Sony or Microsoft are not going to say it that way.
Yeah,
of course, because
they are developing new consoles. I mean, there'll be a new PlayStation.
Right, they still have. Yes. It's like, Ford's not going to say, look, the world's going to flying cars, so we're going to stop making cars with tires.
I remember for years I would ask Alan Mulally when he was chairman of Ford, are you working on autonomous vehicles? And he'd say, no, of course not. Why would we ever do that? His line was, no, Leo, people like to drive. And then, of course, it comes out a few years later. That's exactly what everyone.
Then they have a teenager, and then they wish they didn't let people drive.
No, my daughter's never owning a car. Never. It just doesn't make sense. And I would guess that most kids who are now in middle school will probably not have a car.
My daughter has done $6,700 worth of damage to a vehicle already.
It doesn't make any sense. And that's not bad. If you do damage to yourself or another person, that's irrevocable. So no, that's when I said to Abby, Uber is looking better and better.
So you think irrevocable doesn't need to be looked up, but eponymous does?
Words. They're just words, words. Did you see? I'm really curious what you thought. Maybe this isn't the right venue for it, about this augmented reality Minecraft.
No, we want to talk about it.
Because Pokemon Go. Now, I have to say, for all my Pokemon Go friends, and I had 199, that I have unfriended them all.
Because like literally the maximum.
The max is 200. Yeah.
Okay.
I unfriended you all because I reached level 40, the highest current level. It's like Prestige 11, Paul. I got to the top, and now there's nothing to play for.
Leo, let me ask you a question. Because I just did something in Call of Duty, which I wonder if you can do in Pokemon, which is you can reset it.
No, you can't.
And then it's like you've never played the game.
Actually, I could. I just create a new account and start over. But that sounds horrible. That doesn't sound
it's less horrible than having nothing to attain.
Well, I'm just waiting for Harry Potter and Minecraft AR to come out, and then I'll have other things to do. So honestly, I feel like this Minecraft game is a little bit of a nod to Pokemon Go, because you go around, you walk around and you place Minecraft structures around, right? And the thing about Pokemon Go that people underestimate, it got people walking billions of miles of walking that wouldn't have happened. So that's cool.
Okay. I guess, I credit Harry Potter for getting people to read, even though it's really derivative
obviously
earlier works. But
it's not the greatest book ever written, but kids loved it. Pokemon Go, probably not the greatest game of all time, but it got people walking.
I thought it was entertaining.
I loved it. Like I said, I got to the highest level, and now I'm retiring on top.
What's the Minecraft?
You can start over with Minecraft Earth.
I can't.
Yeah, maybe that will be Mary Jo's first mobile game.
I loved the.
Let's not go that far.
That's how we got you into the Xbox ecosystem.
The promo video for Minecraft.
She'll be seeing little Minecraft creatures on the bars.
Microsoft did something with the promo video that is the same thing they do with HoloLens, which was pretended that augmented reality looks a little like this. They have a girl walking around. They've just moved into a new town, and she's not holding her phone up, which you'd have to do with this game. She's placing Minecraft. Well, there she is. Oh, she is.
There she goes.
But then she never pulls it up again. Puts it in her pocket.
Well, they put a little phone outline on it as if to
show.
Right.
Okay, so that kind of does give you the idea. This doesn't.
I want to believe that I am the reason they did that, because I have been so
You said
brutal.
that? Oh, good. All right.
Well, I've been so brutal to them for them faking what things look like.
Yeah. So I mean, it does give you a different perspective on this, because look at that.
Yeah.
Well, and people who are listening are saying what you're talking about, but it's as if this young woman is is living in a world populated by Minecraft objects, and of course she isn't.
They're kind of like 3D Minecraft objects.
Yeah, and it blows up. The TNT blows up, but of course it's only that way if you hold your device up.
Right. So they have a subtle, what looks like a glass phone frame around each of the Minecraft objects.
I didn't notice that. I give them some credit for at least that.
Actually, I do too. Because, like I said, they've been not so great about that with the HoloLens demos. So maybe because this is a commercial that will actually be on TV or something.
Yeah, I saw it on TV. Yeah.
You did? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's why. 3.6 million views already.
Oh, truth in advertising suddenly applies. Isn't that interesting?
5 days, 3.6 million YouTube views. That shows you there's a lot of interest in this.
Okay, but you want to know why I was interested in this?
Why?
Azure Spatial Anchors.
Oh, of course. Man. That explains everything.
That's how this works.
It's really...
Yes.
Mary Jo, what are Azure Spatial Anchors?
Okay, so you remember when they launched HoloLens 2 in Barcelona? Paul was there. I don't know if he remembers being there, but
it was kind of a blink and you miss it.
A little too many rosé flush slushies. Yeah, okay.
They talked about how you're going to be able to see these objects that you or somebody places around when you have the HoloLens 2, but also when you have an iOS or Android device because of using Azure Spatial Anchors in collaboration with ArcKit and ArcCore, the development kits for the iPhone and Android.
Oh, okay.
Right? So people are going to be able to, that's how this underlying technology will work. Like when you have Minecraft Earth, the reason you're seeing these things that people have placed will be because people designed it using Azure Spatial Anchors.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is there will be, so if I walk by something, a building, and somebody has placed a Minecraft thing there, it's because it persists on Azure.
Because of Azure Spatial Anchors.
That's the persistence that allows me to see something somebody else placed.
So once again, Mary Jo has taken an amazing, entertaining Xbox thing and transformed it somehow into some back-end
magic,
Azure
Paul.
service.
Where's the magic? It's gone.
No, the minute I saw that video, I'm like, how are they doing that? And then I'm like searching all the documents. I'm like, that's how they're doing it. Okay.
All right, we have to show Leo the YouTube the video that
we do.
The Azure Spatial Anchors?
No. A fan video Justin Salvato, who watches Windows Weekly, did. He takes Family Guy and mashes it up with Windows Weekly. Have you ever seen these?
Oh, he's got another one?
Yeah, he has a new one that pertains to this topic.
What just happened? So the easiest way to find it might be to go to maybe go to my Twitter account, and I retweeted it today, I think.
Okay. I can find that then.
Yeah. It's just what we were talking about a minute ago about the way I see technology versus how you guys see it.
You tweet way too much, Paul. I'm just saying.
I know. Well, actually, this is less than. There you go.
There it is.
This is thank you, Justin Salvato. Watch this. It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here, and there is a lot to talk about.
I'm Peter Griffin.
The Build Conference and our special plans. In fact, a lot of conferences coming up from Microsoft. We've got updates for Windows Phone, Windows 10.
I didn't know that.
There's a whole lot of information ahead.
Listen, before we get to the next segment,
you do look like that guy.
I just need time to boot up my Xbox.
Facebook's about to have their big bang launch of Facebook at work. We kind of thought Microsoft was moving away from Yammer, which they bought a couple Yammer and integrating them right into Office 365. But it turns out, no, they are going to continue to push Yammer as a standalone service. In fact, if you have any Yammer licensing as part of that, like you bought the Yammer license, it's going to be on by default.
And putting us all to sleep.
So before it was like not on by default. Administrators had to set you up as a Yammer customer. Now it's going to be on by default. Why are they doing this? You can undo it. There's a way to
all the beer is gone. All the heads are on the table. We do this show every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific. I woke up to tell everybody it's over. That is awesome. 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1900 UTC on live. Retweeting. Also on YouTube. It's also on every podcatcher alive. Subscribe, and that way you won't miss an episode.
What the hell was that?
So good.
Oh, right. We didn't play the end of it.
I missed the end of it. I was busy retweeting. Okay, wait a minute. Let me. We gotta back up here. Got to back up just a little bit.
Yeah, because you do the whole outro thing.
Yeah, I do the outro. Okay. Let's see, how do you get to play? Subscribe, and that way you won't miss an episode.
What the hell was that?
Oh, it's funny because it's true.
Exactly. That's when I started going Azure Spatial Anchors. Paul was like, "Oh no!"
Oh, here we go. Get some beer.
No, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's that this is a tech show. I hate to remind everyone.
Oh yeah, that's right. No, you know what, Mary Jo? Can I say I celebrate your Azure Spatial Anchors?
Thank you.
I tolerate it. No, what's the word?
No, it's an interesting question. You see, I didn't, when I saw that video, one thing that was in my mind was, are those persistent? So I know she's seeing them. Is that because how are they persistent? I mean,
no, in other words, they're persistent for other users.
Yes, that somebody else put that there, and I can look.
So that's a little different from Pokemon, right? Because
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's one thing
don't
missing.
You have that in Pokemon?
No. So the way Pokemon works is a little frustrating for Pokemon players. It was the Ingress players, Niantic's earlier game, who determined where. I'm going to get a little arcane here. Pokestops and Pokegyms are. And,
arcane.
And so those are pre-placed. And in fact, they will be also in Harry Potter. And then the game itself places Pokemon at complete random. You have no control over that. So it actually is a kind of interesting shift that I'll be able to look around the world and see other people's Minecraft creations. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it is. Cool. And it's going to really drive engagement. It sounds like a really cool idea.
And it really makes sense when you don't have to hold a phone up to see it, but if you're wearing goggles.
Yeah.
If you're this is, I'm looking 10 years down the road when you've got some sort of spectacles on, and you can say, go into Minecraft mode, and you'll see all these things people place there. It's great. Yeah. This is sort of the effect of Pokemon Go, which is to add a layer of fantasy on top of the real world. So when you are playing this game and other people are playing this game, you kind of know. I know that the IHOP down the street is a gym, and it adds this kind of special knowledge that only the players have of what the world's like. And so but what's great is you can't place your own in Pokemon Go. So
meanwhile, Mary Jo's over here explaining how the magician did his trick.
Anchors. It's all in Azure Spatial Anchors. That's how they go.
So, but they're going to use that in other ways. Well, how do they show the use of Azure Spatial Anchors in HoloLens in a more industrial manner?
Right. So when we've seen it before with the HoloLens, you can see like somebody walking through a supermarket, say, and the retailer has placed things inside the supermarket, like signs that say, this is on sale, look over here. So you'll see anchors like that.
Okay. So if
you're a retailer, you put those things.
This is really the vision, is you have augmented reality goggles of some kind, and you have modes. You can say, I'd like to see, show me the landmarks around here. Show me the stores around here. It's
amazing for things like Google Maps.
Yeah.
You know.
And then one of the modes is, show me the Minecraft. Show me what people have built. But that's just the beginning. In 10 years, there'll be all kinds of things you can see.
You know, when Paul and I saw the first HoloLens way back, like 2015, one of the demos we saw was with Minecraft, right? And they showed us, like, what would it look like if you're wearing a HoloLens and you could look deep into a model that somebody built and see things inside of it.
That was possibly the coolest demo they did, right?
That was the coolest demo.
I thought it was.
It was. But then they moved away from HoloLens being a consumer thing, and they instead focused it on enterprise, which was the right move. But this kind of brings you back and to say, okay, there are some technologies that Microsoft is developing around the AR mixed reality space that could potentially become consumer technologies.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Now, so, and it makes sense that now is the time that you start paving the way with little experimental things. But without persistence, it doesn't do anything. Right? What are you laughing at?
What are you chuckling over there?
He doesn't like us nerding out.
He doesn't want us to say
divulge the recipe for KFC chicken next.
No, this is why this is cool to me. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, Minecraft art, that looks really fun and cool, but like, how are they doing it? Like, how does it work? Because underneath it's going to be cool too. No? Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I thought about it.
No, Paul.
But it's a video game. No,
I'm going to defend her on this. No,
I'm not disagreeing.
No, you're being a silly Billy. But I think that is interesting, and now we kind of see the potentials for this. And honestly, this was, the idea for this first hit me when I read Daniel Suarez's Demon, right? Because he had everybody's wearing these glasses, and you were looking at, if I looked at somebody, I would see their reputation score over their head, or maybe other information. And that's,
I gotta read that again. It's
a great book. His new book is really good. I just had him on Triangulation last Friday, and his new book is great.
He's had the same guy read all of his audiobooks.
Jeff Gerner is the best. Yeah. His new book, Delta V, I think you'll like. It's about Daniel's new kick, and I kind of support him in this, is we've got to get going on space exploration. Time is running out, and he's making the case that it isn't going to be Mars. That's kind of a lot to bite off. Let's do asteroid mining. Anyway, he makes a very strong case for it, and it's a great sci-fi book. Really fun. So Delta V, that's called. And the interview with him is on Triangulation right now. So let's take a little breaky poo. And
by the way, literally 1 hour for the first topic.
Yeah, I love it.
And who put gaming at the top of the notes? Yeah, this woman right here.
Thank you, Mary Jo, and you and your Azure Spatial Anchors. We owe you a special.
I was going to say you had an ulterior motive for that.
I just want to get that in. It's so spatial. Windows 1903. We'll talk about that. There's big news. The Chredge watch continues. Surface. There's some Surface news, and we got to talk about Huawei because they're melting in front of our eyes. I'm melting. Yep. Our show today brought to you by My Canary. Our canaries. Your canary, I hope. Canary is an amazing thing. It's a honeypot that's easy to install, takes minutes to install, and will protect you against intruders forever. I love honeypots. We know that breaches are a big problem, and there's a category of breaches that is a really big problem. They call it APT, Advanced Persistent Threats. It's hackers who get into your network and live there for days, weeks, months, even years. What, you say that never happens? Marriott. That's all I have to say. When SPG, the reservation network, got hacked, they lived in that network for more than 3 years before detection. That means they got access to everything. Sony Pictures Entertainment, same thing. 6 months they wandered around downloading terabytes of data no one knew. What you need is this little thing, this little box. That's a canary. Designed by an amazing company called Thinkst. They've been in the security game for nearly 20 years. They've trained companies, militaries, and governments on how to break into networks. So they know how to break in. They built the canary to protect you. Canaries are honeypots. That means they look like, well, I'll show you actually our canary. This is the Canary Dashboard for the canary I just showed you. So we'll talk about the alerts in just a second, but here's the canary. It is currently set up as a NAS. It's configured as a Synology NAS. I have turned on a few services to make it a little more attractive, including a FTP, NAS, and a Windows file share. Why not turn on port 139? Really have some fun. You can completely configure it to be anything you want. I mean, pick a device personality, okay? You can do Windows Server 2012, 2008. Let's do 2003 and really scare them. 2000. XP desktop file share. Maybe don't use that. That's just not credible that anybody would have an XP desktop. But you can go all the way up to Windows 10. You've got SharePoint, IIS. You can be Linux. You can be a Dell switch, a Cisco router. Nowadays, that's a good one. A macOS 10 file share, proxy server. They even, look at down here, SCADA devices. You could be a Siemens SCADA device. When you're impersonating it, it will use an Mac suffix that's appropriate to Siemens AG in this case. You can even make the UI look like I had it be a Synology NAS, and there was a login screen. It looked just like a Synology NAS. It was indistinguishable. But it was generated from this IP address by the Canary. If anybody logs in, you get a series of nice alerts that are carefully consolidated so you don't get overwhelmed with your beeper going crazy. You can see these are my most recent alerts. I haven't had one in 6 weeks. And that was just me disconnecting it. But they even alert you that it's being disconnected. That's the Canary IP address. See, it's an internal IP address. We had some time ago Canary alerts for a NAS. It was weird. I was getting all these alerts from something that was scanning our network from within the network. And we tracked it down. It turned out Megan had installed like a Western Digital Passport NAS or something that was scanning our network. We immediately disconnected it. No harm, no foul, but I loved it that we saw it. And it was a single useful alert that we could act on. Things canaries don't look vulnerable on your network. They look valuable. You can put fake files on them. You can enroll them in Active Directory. And it also allows you to generate an unlimited supply of Canary tokens. These tokens are other files you can spread around your network that when they're hit, they phone home. So maybe we have a spreadsheet somewhere on another computer that says payroll information. Maybe there's a PDF that says passwords on it somewhere on our network. If a bad guy sees it, tries to open it, we'll get an alert immediately. You also get all the login information when they hit the NAS, for instance. I get all the login information. So that gives you some information, too, about what they think they know, if they use an employee's login. I love this. The system's very well priced. You don't pay an upfront cost. You actually license the Canaries annually. That means if anything goes wrong, one of them breaks, they just send you a new one, no cost. And the pricing is right. You can try a few and scale up as you need them. Some small shops have 1 or 2 Canaries, like us. Large banks have hundreds. Casino back-end operations, you get the idea. In fact, Canaries are deployed all over the world on all 7 continents. Some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley run them and love them. In fact, you could see the love at canary.tools/love. But once you're convinced that you don't want to end up on this year's top 10 data breaches, go to canary.tools/twit. Let me give you an example pricing so you get an idea. $7,500 a year, you'd get 5 Canaries. You get your own hosted console, all the upgrades, all the support, all the maintenance for a full year. So that's for 5. But again, you don't have to buy 5. You can buy as many or as few as you need. Special offer, use the offer code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. We like that because it lets them know you heard it on Windows Weekly. And you like that because you get 10% off forever for the life of your account. We know you're going to love your Things Canary. If you're not happy, you can return your Canaries. They have a very generous 2-month money-back guarantee, so for a full refund. So you're not at risk. Try it. See if you like it. I think you will, and it gives you peace of mind. It's funny. It's the only thing on my network I don't want to hear from. A quiet canary is a happy canary, but when you need it, it will let you know. Canary.tools/twit. Use the offer code TWIT. Thank you, Canary. Thank you, Things. They are amazing. They've done such a great job. And every network ought to have some Canaries on there. It's just honeypots. That's all it is. Hey, just a quick note. We are doing a survey. We do these from time to time. This one asks you how you use collaborative software at work. I know a lot of you are enterprise types. If you use collaborative software at work, would you do me a favor and go to twit.to/survey14. twit.to/survey13. Thanks in advance. I appreciate that. Back to the show. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. I hope they haven't fallen asleep on the table. Head down, drool coming out.
No, we can talk more about Yammer and keep everyone awake.
Ooh, I just saw a truck go by. I have a window out here. Obviously bound for a brewery in the area with big chrome aluminum tanks. Brewery apparatus.
Yeah.
Lagunitas has been expanding like crazy next door. Just crazy. So, 1903. Should I be a seeker? It's time, right?
It's time. It came out yesterday. Finally, Ta-da!
Ta-da! So 1905, but it's called 1903.
Right.
Yeah. The May update, 1903, now generally available to everyone. Well, not everyone, but many. Most. If you want to go get it, you can manually go get it. If you're an enterprise,
right?
Right. Yeah. If you're an enterprise user, it's on Volume Licensing Service Center and all the places you might look. Windows Server update services.
Yeah.
It seems it's been quiet.
It has.
Which I take to be a good sign. Right, as far as the quality.
Yeah, right. Haven't been any major screams. Although this was hilarious. Yesterday, 1 minute literally after I posted that, hey, it's generally available, somebody said to me, so has anyone reported bugs yet? I'm like, so it just was turned generally available 5 seconds ago.
Yep. Welcome to Twitter 2019.
Come on now. But yeah, it's so far. You know who I did see complain, though, was Peter Bright. He said he couldn't get it to install on his main PC, and Tom was guessing maybe because of BattleEye, the anti-cheat thing.
Oh. He is
or
a
if you
guy.
haven't, right. And if you have a USB device or a micro SD card in your device, it won't automatically work.
Yeah, somebody asked me about that on Twitter, and I had thought that had been fixed, but then he found a fact where Microsoft said they would fix it by the end of May.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's been fixed, but yeah, I agree with you. I haven't had anybody come back and say, oh, it's not working, or it just blew something up.
The next week or two might be the real test, right? Because now the normal people are getting it, but the last releases we had problems in the Insider program that people were reporting, so we'll see.
Do you watch The Enemy Within?
Mm-mm.
No.
This is, I guess it's a TV show?
Yep.
This is apparently they have a thing in conjunction with Microsoft AI. You want to see it?
Mm-hmm.
I guess a clip from the show. Bonus scene from The Enemy Within, presented by Microsoft AI, it says.
It does look like a Microsoft ad.
Never stops.
It has that feel. Oh, she's on a Surface.
To the life of a technical analyst.
Oh, maybe this is just an ad.
Huh? Navigated us through that airport today without a hitch. How?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
Azure Spatial Anchors.
With Microsoft AI, I reproduced the airport by stitching together thousands of CCTV photos. That's how I could see everything that you could see.
I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, and if I had more time, I could use this AI service.
Like
I can isolate a
product
specific
placement
object in a crowd.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a gross one.
A watch, a hat.
I wouldn't expect this in the show.
Seems like you did a pretty good job without it.
Yeah.
Is that a HoloLens?
Sometimes do paid product placement stuff
like that HoloLens.
I do see surfaces.
Just over your head.
Put on a
There's the
HoloLens.
HoloLens.
You hear that all the time. Put on a HoloLens.
So the hologram that you can see is
see those
a
Azure
3D
Spatial
blueprint
Anchors?
of the airport terminal.
Amazing.
Now reach out and take off the roof.
Okay, I've had enough. So I just
that's a tough one, huh?
I don't think that was in the show because that's so.
You see a lot if you watch TV at all. You'll see a lot of Microsoft devices, and then you'll see at the end it's sponsored by Microsoft, whatever. But they've really stepped
or
that
like a bonus segment they paid for, right? Yeah.
Somebody who watches the show Marsworm in our chat room says yes, it was in the last episode. They used the HoloLens in the show.
But they talked about it like that.
I don't think they did this part.
No, that's probably an outtake or a special.
Using a HoloLens is fine, but saying, "Oh no, I use Microsoft AI services. I put on the HoloLens."
Yeah. That would be just too obvious. It's kind of cool. I mean, I think they can make the case this should be in more shows. They do this all the time and stuff. In the Born Identity and stuff, they do it all the time. They don't have a Macintosh icon bouncing in the screen though, so
yeah.
Apologies. They did. No, they're saying Hellcat says that was the scene in the show. That's so lame.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Oh my God,
I had heard. I know that you showed that. I think I heard from some people that it was like a bonus segment at the end of the show.
So it was paid ad time.
Kind of like, but presented as it's part of the show.
Well, of course,
but
you see the characters from the show, so if you're watching it, you're going to watch it, and you're. Yeah.
It's really funny. I enjoy. Sometimes you'll see older shows like House of Cards. The first season where they have giant Windows phones.
I know.
And they show the Windows phone.
I don't like that kind of thing, Leo, but you know what? When I'm thirsty, I got to tell you, I go for the Zephyr Hills.
Cut away from Paul.
Nothing satisfies my thirst quite like this kind of water.
Brought to you by Altoids. Okay. Yeah, it's like the Pepsi can sitting on the desk with the logo facing the screen. And then what you'll find also in a lot of production environments is, people will, like as we've done, cover over logos and things like that or turn the Pepsi can away because we don't. I remember a segment on Letterman where Steve Martin is rolled in a bed in his jammies and he's got a beer can in his hand. And from a distance, it looks like Budweiser. But then Martin breaks the fourth wall and says, how do you like this carefully painted can? And it with a close-up, it's just like, but it's because they don't want to give Bud a plug, a free plug.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you watch any reality shows, like those home shows, a lot of times people will wear a T-shirt with a logo on it.
Yeah, they blur them out.
And they have to blur them out on the fly, or there'll be a painting on the wall or some kind of art or whatever.
I hate that.
Yeah, it's really strange.
I hate that, yeah. So May 21st was the day. 1903 is out. Microsoft
we should
start pushing it next month.
You know what we should tell people, though, is they have this new download and install now option with this.
Yeah, Windows Update, yep.
Which is different, right? So if you're on Windows Update before, when you were a seeker, if you just were seeking for other updates, you would automatically trigger it to download to your machine, even if you didn't want it. But now they've stopped doing that, and you'll have to actually click download and install now to get it.
Right.
And if you don't,
it actually separates it out.
You won't install it automatically, even if you do some seeking for other updates.
So, by the way, it does that with other types of updates too, and I'm trying to figure out what the distinction is. But I think once you're on 1903, I think cumulative updates might be like that as well. They kind of add it to an extra section below, so you can get your Defender updates and whatever else, driver updates separately. It's a good idea.
It is. The one thing we didn't know, and now we have a clue about, though, is how long you can just keep not hitting install now. Like, so say you have the download and install now in your Windows Update, and you think, okay, if I never hit it, that means I'll never have to take this update, right? But that's not true.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
But before yesterday, they didn't tell us how long you can actually keep waiting. They said, when you get close to the end of support from Microsoft, at some point, we're going to just push it to you.
That's right.
But they never would say how long. But if you read yesterday's blog post, in the notes, in the fine print, it says, hey, the 1803 update is coming up on end of life as of this November.
Wow.
So as of June, if you don't have it, we might start pushing it to your machine.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So that's 5 months. That's further out than I was thinking.
Yeah, I think the amount of time will vary, right, because of where you are in the cycle or whatever. But
yeah.
So it's literally tied to the last version of Windows 10 that's not supported.
Right.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah, the one that's about to expire.
That's not particularly onerous. I mean, that's pretty good.
It's better. It's way better.
Knowing Microsoft, I mean, I thought you were going to say 30 days, or something.
Oh, no.
Like eventually it'll slip up.
There's no reason not to get it, right? It's not dangerous.
Well, for all the usual reasons. I mean, I think it's not a horrible idea to wait. I always say this.
Waiting.
I mean, there's no reason not to wait a month, even. I mean, 3 weeks, whatever. Just make sure there's no news reports of major issues. Let the rest of the world beta test it. I mean, what I just said means nothing to anyone listening to this. I'm sure most of the people who listen to Windows Weekly are actively seeking it or already have it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they got it months ago. I would assume. Yeah.
Yesterday, the minute it came out, they were like, "Get it." Yeah.
Yeah. I by the way, for whatever it's worth, I've actually it's worth nothing. Why am I even saying this? But I've had great success with it, and I've never seen any major issues. I don't know. It seems pretty great to me, but That means, like I said, that means nothing. Sorry, I mentioned it.
I kind of want this. I kind of want this version of Windows 10 because there is some really good stuff in it.
Like the Fluent stuff that you like so much?
Yeah, that Fluent stuff, whatever that is. But if I were an enterprise, I would really want that Windows Sandbox isolation technology that is in this version. And the Lite theme, right?
Okay, I was going to say, there's something interesting about the Lite theme. The Lite theme, there's always been some weird wording around themes in Windows 10 because themes in Windows mean something else. Remember, you used to be able to download these theme packs and stuff. So if you go into the personalization section of settings, you'll see themes, and that has nothing to do with the theme, like the OS, what we think of as the OS theme. And so the Microsoft in the past had called this an app mode, and it was a light app mode, which was the default, and then eventually there was a dark app mode. In 1903, there's a new version of the Lite Mode, but it's actually more nuanced than that. Let me just bring it up because it's kind of strange how they did it. But so obviously it will respect however your system is configured when you upgrade. So if you upgrade to this, it's going to be whatever you had before, light or dark. But actually, they differentiate between the Windows mode, which we think of as like the system theme, and then the app mode, which is how individual store apps will be configured, light or dark, right? So what that means is you could have the system as, say, dark, but all your apps would be light, or vice versa. And the way that it comes up by default on a clean install is actually kind of a mix. It's not full light or full dark. It's, I guess it would be technically light app mode, but dark system mode. So it's kind of a nice distinction, right? Because it's obviously why, but it's kind of a neat thing that you can not have them all just be the same. It's not all dark or all light. You can kind of mix and match between the apps and the system. And then, of course, you can go into individual apps in most cases and say, I want this one to be different. Like maybe you have all light apps, but when you're in Skype or you would want to do this maybe in Groove or the movies and TV app, you're like, I want those to be in dark mode because that makes sense for that kind of stuff. So it's a little more nuanced than, light, dark, whatever, but I like the way they did it.
Nice. So yeah, I definitely am going to take it on my Windows 10 devices, but I'm going to wait like maybe 2 weeks and just make sure some horrible thing doesn't happen to other people.
Yes.
But there is a new thing. I think this is new, right? The health dashboard page that they have.
Yep.
Microsoft has now got this page where you can go look at it and see the known issues. So if you're thinking like, I want to get 1903, but first, is there anything that's still outstanding that I am not willing to put up with or that might block me? You can go to this page they have, the health dashboard page, and see the list of things. So like for 1903, display brightness might not respond to adjustments. Audio not working with Dolby Atmos headphones and home theater. So you can see these things. You can see the status, investigating or mitigated, and you can make a decision. Like I want this, but I'm not ready to risk it with what's out there or not.
Yeah. It's good.
So how to find that page though? It's in the docs. I know it has a long URL, docs.microsoft.com. If you look for status of Windows 10 1903, I think when you're in the docs.microsoft.com page, the status health dashboard thing will come up.
That'll be nice if you follow any, Windows blogs or tech blogs. The writers of those blogs can use that page as a resource now, and there'll be stories that will say Microsoft fixes whatever bug, which will enable 1903 to be automatically rolled out to a different class of PCs that have that hardware or whatever the issue was with.
Yep. But what about the field guide?
Oh, what about the field guide? Because I'm an insane person and I don't value my time, I decided to continue updating the book. So it's never really fully updated. So, depending on the chapter, it could be 1 or 2 versions behind. But I've updated 4 of the chapters for 1903, and I will update at least 5 or 6 more. I would say is probably it would probably be some mix of 1809 and 1903. But I wanted to make sure the stuff that really changed in 1903 was part of that. And so. There's some fundamental chapters in the book, like there's a Get to Know Windows 10 chapter that kind of blows through a bunch of the stuff, like the Windows Update stuff is in there. And I wanted to make sure that got updated because this update actually did change some things in meaningful ways. Like the Lite Mode thing I just talked about, for example, that will be in the personalization chapter. That's actually the next one. But I feel like it's, some things in Windows 10 don't change that much over time. Some things do, and I want to make sure I'm covering the stuff that has. Like I'm going to have to update the Xbox chapter, for example. A lot of changes there.
Windows is a full-time job.
Yeah, that's what I found. Yeah,
plenty to write.
My dad said to me one morning when I was working, and he said, writing on the laptop he was visiting, and he said, "Wow, you really take your job seriously." And I said, "Yeah, it's a career. It's not a hobby."
Let's not go crazy here.
Yeah.
Oh, and we should mention Server 1903 also now generally available as of yesterday. So Server 1903 is the semi-annual channel version of Server that is the complement to the May update 1903.
Nice.
There's some new container stuff in there, especially around support for Windows in Kubernetes, and what Microsoft's doing separately with its Azure Kubernetes service, now supporting Windows in preview. What else was in there? There's some things around GPU acceleration. What else?
Admin Center.
Admin Center. Yep.
Yeah. Version 1904, just in case you didn't think the version stuff was too screwed up.
Right. So, yeah, Server is 1903, but the GUI-based Admin Center for it is 1904.
Oh, come on.
Yep.
And they both came out in 1905.
Oh, my God.
I know.
No. So Project Honolulu, which is the Admin Center, that's kind of on its own trajectory. It's updated independently and all, so it's not really part of.
Yeah, you can get it. It's in preview, I think, essentially.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a number of features that are fairly obscure, even for this enterprise reporter in 1903. So you probably want to go check the Microsoft documentation and see if that's anything you would care about as an IT person. It was one thing.
So I don't really cover Windows Server that much anymore, but Server Core at some point became the most desirable configuration of Windows Server, right? And part of that change, aside from the removal of a lot of, well, actually, that is the change, the removal of a lot of admin tools. They have an add-on pack, whose name I now forget, but it lets you in one whack bring back a bunch of really needed admin tools. And they added a couple of tools to it in this version, and one of them is Hyper-V. So it's like you can get a graphical tool for managing virtual machines. But I thought that was kind of interesting because obviously it's like, look, here's the stripped down version of Server we want you to run. We understand you can't actually run that, so here's they have this add-on pack you can add to it to kind of bring it up a little bit without completely destroying the attack surface.
Nice.
Yep. Oh, Michael Kiesel, who's listening, said, here's an easy way to get to that health dashboard. It's actually called the Message Center. So if you go to the Windows 10, what do they call it? Release information page, and then you click on Message Center, you'll see it. You'll see that health dashboard. So that makes it a little easier to find it. Thank you.
Now, this next one got my hopes up because it says your subtitle says Chredge Watch, and I thought that was a Chredge watch.
Oh,
yeah,
but no, it's watching the Chredge, which is not as interesting, to be honest with you.
Although, first preview for macOS.
Yeah, so I'm wondering what people would. Who is the market for that?
Well, it's the same, almost as developers, and like I said a lot about this browser. I think there's a pretty big market of people who want Chrome, need that compatibility, or want that compatibility.
Wouldn't they just use Chrome?
No, but they don't want the Google tracking stuff, and this is a chance to.
Well, I use Brave, which is a Chromium-based privacy browser on Mac.
Or if you have a shop with some PCs and some Macs, and you want to have everybody be on the same browser, I guess
Chredge eventually will have its own kind of personality, its own what will that be? Why would a Mac? I understand why a Windows user is going to use it, obviously. But what will Edge be on a Mac?
Mac version of Edge looks more like a Mac app too, right? This is part of the announcement. They're not just taking the Windows version and throwing it at the Mac. I mean, they're trying to make those user experience concessions as well, so it looks natural and so forth. So I don't think it's going to be a bad experience. It's, if people, a lot of people use Chrome on the Mac, but
it's probably more people use Chrome, I would bet, than Safari. Maybe it's 50-50. But
could be.
I'm not sure if I understand what the appeal.
Yeah, I think when they announced
Windows, it makes sense, but
when they announced Chromium, the plans to move to Chromium with Edge, and they talked about going to Mac, they said, we know a lot of developers, for app developers, site developers, they're running Macs, and we want to make it easy on them to test our browser. So if our browser isn't there,
for sure,
right?
Especially if you're developing for Edge, it makes sense. Yeah, you need it.
Yeah,
and this is the first time Edge has been available on a Mac in any form. So
in years, right? Well,
they
used to be on the Mac.
IE they had.
IE was,
but even IE hasn't been on it in a decade.
Oh no, many years.
No, and Edge isn't even still technically on Windows 7, although the leaked version is out there for that. But that's coming too.
Okay, here's a wild one. Goucham in our chat room. When are we going to see a Linux Chredge?
So, by the way, that is happening. I
think it is too.
That,
yeah.
Well, I know I've been told explicitly it's happening. I mean, more than once.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
It's not a priority, right? But in the same vein as we know web developers, blah blah blah. A lot of developers use Linux, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, they've been asked that on Twitter, the Edge team, and their answers are very coy, which makes me think, they're doing it, but just haven't announced it.
Yeah,
it's understandable
for the same reason. I get it.
Yeah.
You can on Linux. It's easy to use Chromium, Chrome. Firefox is very popular on Linux. Most Linux distros come with Firefox out of the box.
Yep,
that's the kind of default. And then I use Brave on every platform, including Linux. So it's available everywhere. It's Chromium. But did Brave ever figure out the cross-device sync thing? Is that a thing yet? Yep.
It's okay.
So they call it Brave Sync, and you have a long text string that you use. And so I'm syncing across all devices. But it's only bookmarks. But in a way, I like that better. Chrome would sync extensions, and I'm not sure I always wanted all the extensions.
Yeah,
everywhere.
I mean, you can. I don't know how it works in Chrome because I've not really looked at it. But in Edge, you will be able to determine what syncs.
That's nice.
So if you don't want extensions, you can turn that on.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to do it. Right
today
now,
it's
Brave
easy because it's not on.
Yeah. Surface headphones, big price cut.
Yeah. I've not used them for any extended period of time. I will, in a very brief kind of hands-on thing at the announcement last October. I thought they were great.
They
sounded
likes
great.
them, right? Brad's using them.
They're the over-the-air type, like the big Bose type headphones. The one thing they have, which I think is a great feature, is it lets you turn down the noise canceling on the fly in kind of a gradient scale. And so if you want to hear more of the outside world or whatever, that can be advantageous for obvious reasons. But Microsoft doesn't exactly have a rich history in audio hardware, and it's kind of unclear who would buy such a product, frankly. And at $350, you're talking about the same price that you would pay for a high-quality pair of Bose headphones or whatever. And so I suspect they've not sold very well, and now they're $250, which is maybe still fairly expensive, honestly, for headphones, but it's probably a more reasonable price. So we'll see what that means for the future, but there we go.
All right, let's take a little teeny-weeny time out. Still to come, we got that Huawei discussion. If you liked Azure Spatial Anchors, you'll love full differential sync. And I don't know how he did it, but he's got more Xbox news.
I know. He snuck that in there.
It's everywhere.
You can't get rid of it. Our show today is brought to you by the great folks at Atlassian. I'm proud to say we're an Atlassian house. I think our engineering team is really cool. I like them. They work on projects. They don't need a lot of direction. They stay in touch with one another, and more importantly, they stay. Their communication is excellent with me. I know what they're up to, and a lot of that is because of Atlassian collaboration tools for IT teams around the world. A lot of IT teams use it. I think people think of Atlassian as for developers, right? Especially because of Jira, which is their best-known product. A lot of developers use that for agile development, but Jira is just as good for an IT team that has to keep track of projects, who's responsible for what stage that project's in. It works with Confluence. We love that because I insist, and I think they're happy to do it, that everything gets documented in Confluence, another Atlassian product. If you've got a code base, you got to use Bitbucket, right? Also from Atlassian. I mean, I can go on and on. IT teams these days are at the heart of the cloud-based enterprise. Everything revolves around the IT team. I know you IT guys know it. I know that maybe the boss isn't quite so convinced, but I believe it. And man, the pressure's on, right? Expectations are high. The stakes are high. And if you're in IT, you can't fall short inside business-critical workflows. That's just not an option. You've got to plan and execute faster and better than ever. You've got to communicate. And I think that's a really important thing to underscore, not only with each other, but with your stakeholders, with your boss, with your colleagues and clients. Atlassian is not just for developers. It offers an affordable, reliable suite of tools for teams of all kinds, and I should point out all sizes. It scales beautifully. Whether you're in DevOps or you're doing Agile or your IT apps or Ops or ITSM, whatever you're doing, and because teams are always moving, always changing, goals are always shifting, Atlassian will grow with you. So there's always a tool that's right for you. We mentioned Jira and Confluence and Bitbucket, but there's Ops Genie and Status Page if you have to detect incidents, coordinate response efforts, resolve issues faster, and again, stay connected. I like it because there's an Atlassian tool for every part of the IT business, and you never have to leave the Atlassian tools for a third party. So the workflow is streamlined. You can choose the tool that's right for your current framework, but trust that as you grow, as needs change, Atlassian is there for you. And it all starts with Jira and Confluence. Here's what I want you to do. The tools for your IT team are easy, they're free to try, and you can go right now to Atlassian.com/IT and pick the tools right for your team, knowing they'll be there. They'll be there as your team grows, your needs change. Atlassian.com/IT. Try Atlassian today to see what IT can be. Atlassian.com/IT. I'm always proud to say we have been for years, an Atlassian house at Twit. And we thank them for their support. They're great products, and we thank you for supporting us by going to Atlassian.com/IT. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. Wow, this Huawei thing, I almost feel like we're watching an empire crumble. And it's not the first time the U.S. government has done this. They pretty much put ZTE out of business. Same way. But I've never seen a case of just these restrictions. Even Microsoft now apparently has pulled the Huawei MateBook from the Microsoft store.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
They've not said anything about withdrawing the Windows license. I'm actually confused
by how quickly companies have moved to adhere to the letter of this law. I find that to be very strange.
Yeah, you almost feel like there's some memo went out that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And there have been rumors. See, for a long time I thought, is this political? Is this part of a new, and I think a disturbing trend towards politically based trade wars? It's a new way to wage war. We don't like China,
right? So
let's screw China. Or is it really driven by security and intelligence concerns? And if so, what's the evidence?
Exactly.
Well, I was going to say, I like, everyone talks about that. There is no one's ever come up with any evidence.
Nope.
You know, I get into a lot of. It's funny how people who are on my website, on the comment section of Twitter, whatever, have such shallow memories of the past. There is, aside from our fears of governmental coercion, from China, whatever, that we don't literally have any evidence of. The things that Huawei has done badly or wrong or whatever you want to say it, IP violations or IP theft, whatever. is the exact same things that Microsoft did back in the 90s. It's the exact same things that Samsung did to dominate the smartphone industry. They went to court and were found guilty of it. But now they're dominant, right? And so the trajectory for Huawei, at least in the phone business, I can't speak to networking, to me has been very similar, if not identical, to what Samsung did, right? Which was copy everybody at first and then start really innovating, And we're at the point now where their phones are actually a lot better than anything that Samsung has to offer, or OnePlus or Google or whoever you want to talk to. And all of a sudden, we found something that can stop Huawei, and it's not Samsung; it's the United States government. And it is kind of an interesting thing. I don't know. There's these charges. I mean, the Chinese government can tell Huawei to spy on whoever, right? Were we talking about this with Microsoft and the NSA and all the Windows backdoors that supposedly existed? I mean, isn't this the same conversation? Isn't the United States government the one that has spied more on its allies than every other country combined? Haven't we been caught doing this many times? It's amazing to me how quickly everyone just believes that Huawei is guilty of something. Like they have to be.
I think it's interesting. Microsoft's one of the only tech vendors who's not commenting. Like Qualcomm has said something and Intel has said something and Google has said something, but Microsoft, we all ask them and they're just like, yeah, we're not commenting on this.
I mean, Microsoft's relationship with Huawei is probably on the small side, right? Compared to, say, Google.
Right. Yeah, but if they pull, so the real issue is if the Google pulling Android, if Microsoft pulled Windows, ARM has pulled the chips, Qualcomm has pulled the chips, Huawei's got nothing, but they haven't. I know there's no statement that they have, but at this point, that may be all they got left.
Well, first of all, as of today, I mean, a lot of that stuff is temporarily on hold, right? Because they have like a 90-day suspension of whatever. Right? And a lot of that has to do with the networking end of it, because what we discover when we move in a knee-jerk fashion is that actually there are repercussions of that. And there are some smaller network providers in rural America, especially, who rely on Huawei equipment because it's so inexpensive. And ending this relationship would harm them badly. So, we'll see what happens. But I do think this is just a tactic of the trade war, the nuclear option.
I mean, but you could. I also don't think it's unreasonable to say whether or not Huawei is owned by the Chinese government or invested in by the Chinese military, none of which we can prove. If you're a Chinese company and the government, President Xi, comes to you and says, we want you to turn off all 5G switches in the U.S., you can't say no. So I understand the notion, but we're in an interconnected world. The United
States government went to Cisco and said, we want you to turn off all the 5G switches.
No, I think Cisco could say no. There's a big difference. No, I think Cisco could say no.
Okay. I mean, I
don't think a Chinese company can say no to the Chinese government.
Right.
They do so at their peril. Nobody contests that that's an authoritarian regime.
No, but you have to look at the reverse of this. Every device that we use is made in China. You kind of have to wonder at what nuclear option the Chinese could pull on us right now.
Well, exactly. That's why trade war is a terrible thing.
Yeah. What if China just said, "Look, we're not going to let you make iPhones in China"?
Yeah, the prudent thing would be to work it out, and as long as China has an economic interest in the success of the U.S., they're not going to act.
No, I mean this is militaristically. It's stupid for both sides. But look, if there was some legitimate security concern with regards to networking, and the United States government went to the governments of Europe and elsewhere and said, "Look, here's the evidence. Here's why we think we should ban these things," and that was the discussion. That would
apparently that's what happened. They did. They went to these.
They did, and they didn't have any evidence. That's the problem.
Yeah, because some countries said no. Canada said, "Yeah, all right, it's going to cost us billions, but okay." Australia.
A lot of it is you're playing on the relationship. You can't. What's Canada going to do?
We're allies. Right, we're allies.
They're just going to toe the line, right? That's always worked great for our allies, by the way.
And by the way, we've never. Not that makes any difference, but we're not clean in this matter. We spied on Angela Merkel's phone.
Right. Well, that's what. Of course.
Right. I mean,
it's embarrassing.
Oh, I really don't know what the answer is, because you want to secure your networks. The next step after trade war is cyber war. We're definitely approaching that.
We've already engaged in cyber war as well, by the way, for sure. Against Iran, certainly. But yes, I think there's a saner approach to this. The disturbing thing about this to me is that the United States government has unilaterally decided to destroy a company that is based in another country because that company is based in another country. And it's I don't know. I'm sure that Huawei has done its fair share of shady dealings. Of course, all companies have. That's fine.
They actually do have a history of bad behavior.
They have. I would say they have a history of not so much shady but shoddy behavior with regards to fixing problems in networking things and so forth, leaving and debugging things and whatever. And people look at, they're spying on us, whatever. But there are countries in Europe especially that have kind of come up with this kind of common sense approach to look, we're going to make sure that whatever we implement is something we can test and make sure the security is right and it's where we want, that they're replying to us when we have problems and responding and getting the right things done and so forth. And, Huawei needs to be able to compete for those contracts, and on the merit of their technology. But this is turning into like a geopolitical battle, and it's like it's claimed the United States has somehow has the moral high road here is like the most ludicrous thing that it's unbelievable.
No, but we have the right to protect ourselves.
Yeah, from threats both real and imaginary.
Yeah. It's really,
that's the
it
problem.
is. That's the problem. Is it real or is it imaginary? You can see how it could be real.
Yep. I would hope that in a democracy like the United States of America, that our government could be transparent and tell us what the problem is, not just that we hate them because they're Chinese. And that's all I've heard.
It does feel a little xenophobic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Little.
Yeah.
It's, and look, there's a lot that goes into this from the perspective of the United States, like the world's superpower and so forth. There's, this understanding that this no run lasts forever, sorry, Golden State fans or whatever. But, that's.
Wait a minute.
What can we do?
Wait, slow down, buddy. Don't you be knocking the Warriors.
Wait a minute. You brought sports into this now.
All right. Sorry, Patriots fans, whatever, however you want to say it. Eventually it's going to come crashing down. And, obviously the United States, like the British Empire before it, is going to, not.
But we don't have to call for the end of the United States Empire to resolve this.
No.
It's over. Democracy. It was a great idea. Goodbye.
No, sorry, you misunderstood.
Don't get depressed here, Paul. It's okay. It's going to be all right.
I'm not. I'm just explaining that what we see as a threat. It's a vague threat, but it's a big threat. It's the biggest consumer market in the world.
Right.
Their technology is advancing at it. I mean, this country was run on coal like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
This is, this thing, they've come up so quickly. It's scary.
I have a soft spot for China. I was a Chinese studies major in college. I always loved the culture, the language, the history. I've only been to China
cultural
once.
Appropriations.
Yeah, but no, it's an amazing country.
Sure.
Well, so have our allies. Korea and Japan are not innocent of appropriation either, of intellectual property.
Neither were with the United States is a giant bucket of cultural appropriation. That's what we are. That's the melting pot.
But every country has the right to protect itself, and I think that that is our right.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. It's understandable. Like, I get it. Like, I sort of get it. It's just that the way this is going down is so ham-handed and self-destructive.
It doesn't feel like a sensible straight line policy. It feels like many of the things we've been doing lately. It's very zigzag, inconsistent. Yeah. It
also, a lot of the things that this administration does are like really violent and crazy, and it's like, never mind.
Right.
They just
that's what I think is going to happen.
I
think like in a week, he'll just change his mind, and then suddenly he'll be like, "Oh, just kidding. Everything's great."
I found some other thing I hate over here. I'm going to move on to this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. What bugs me is just the ease at which people slip into. It's something screwed on the Chinese. It's look, their phones have curved screens just like Sam. They're stealing stuff. They're like, of course they're going to spy. It's so knee-jerk and automatic. Like it's depressing. And then of course, when I try to, on my site, if I write about Huawei and I try to interject the fact that, hey, by the way, this is xenophobic, or by the way, they've never presented any evidence to anybody. It's like, oh, you just love the Chinese, you love Huawei. Like, is what? Why? Why would I?
Right.
I just looking at it logically, I don't understand where this stuff comes from. It's sad. It's sad how easily we fall into this trap.
I blame Twitter.
Yeah.
You
well,
do?
the whole mentality behind Twitter. Sure.
Well, social media in general, for sure.
I think
People
we're
just go crazy.
governed. We're a nation governed by Twitter.
Yeah, we are right now.
That's what you get. But that's what you
the
get.
Mentality of Twitter, for sure.
Yeah, that's
it's
what
the
you
level
get.
of discourse, which is
Is
not
it
very intelligent.
Is it conceivable that we could find a way to? I think it is
To be better.
to have Huawei use Huawei gear, but make sure it's secure. The problem is it's very software based, and so it gets automatic updates, and so there's no guarantee that it couldn't get a malicious update, but so could everything.
Of course. Microsoft rolls out malicious updates by mistake all the time. That's the nature of software.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
It's a tough one.
Think about it from our perspective. We cover Microsoft, right? We just talked about how evil Bill Gates was back in the day, and people don't even realize this.
Yeah.
I got to remind everybody, the United States was found guilty of antitrust violations in the United States, in Europe, and in South Korea. They had to make major behavioral changes everywhere.
Right.
And they turned into a completely different company. 20 years later, whatever it is, they've evolved into a different kind of a company. But for all the terribleness that Google or Apple or whoever is capable of, Amazon, whatever, there was never anything like Microsoft that like lorded over the industry like this company. And now its fans are like, oh yeah, Huawei, it couldn't happen to a better company. Can't trust those Chinese guys. And it's like, geez, guys, are you kidding me? Have we seriously forgotten our history here? It's amazing. And by the way, these companies I just mentioned, Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, all do business with China. All of them.
Right.
Are we going to hold them to some high level of standard now? Because they all understand it's an authoritative regime. They're all doing business in China. They're trying to do more. They want to do as much as they can. Are those companies evil? I mean, I just don't. It's crazy to me, the lightning rod that Huawei is for people, or China maybe more generally. I don't know. I know what I'm.
No, it's
like
it's
Chamberlain in the days before World War II.
It's a constant question for me because I don't know where to come down on this. I really don't, and I just see Huawei being basically destroyed. The Huawei's chairman is plucky.
Yeah.
And he says, it's going to be fine.
They talk big. But
we've been expecting this for years. Who needs ARM chips? Who needs Android? Who needs
systems.
Windows? Who needs?
Yeah.
Pretty soon you got nothing.
Yeah. Well, right. So, I mean, the United States' efforts to harm Huawei's networking business have had kind of mixed results, right?
But now it's spread to their entire business.
Right. And
there was something happened. You pointed it out, but there's something happened because all of a sudden Google said, okay, no Android. And after that, it was a cascade effect.
That never made any sense to me, how quick Google came out. So, we're not doing this anymore. It's like,
something happened.
What's this? Are you kidding me?
But it could be.
Isn't there an appeals process?
It could be the director of the CIA said, hey, look, buddy, here's the picture of the missile complex in Cuba.
Okay. I know, but see what you just said. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if that's what it is, I need someone to say that that's what it is.
Exactly. Or even if you can't say it's that, right? Even if you can't say, I can't show you why. But
he said this to me. Our government would never have gone after Huawei unless they knew that there was something going on there. And it's like, guys, that is not how our government is supposed to act. Are you trust this government? Are you crazy? That's insane. Like all of a sudden, we're the paramount of like
you could
trust.
I mean, you can say they can't reveal what they know because they're protecting sources.
Yes, then say it.
Google probably cannot say at all because of NSL or some sort of restrictions. We know that the intelligence agencies in this country will tie companies' hands about what they can disclose. Thanks to the Patriot Act.
By the way, when that's happened, Microsoft said that. Microsoft has said what you just said. Our hands are tied because there's certain things we cannot disclose.
Yeah, you can at least say that.
You could say that.
But they may even have told, I suspect they've been told, you can't even say that.
Well, I last time I checked, this is not an authoritative regime, and it is a democracy.
Yeah, but the power of the tweet, man, no one wants to get hit by tweet attacks.
I'm sorry. We're better than this. I
agree.
This is not acceptable.
It's really a tough one.
Yep.
You know, I will say, if it is real, if there's a real reason, somebody is going to leak it to a reporter somewhere.
Yeah. You think it might have happened over the past couple of years, but yeah, sure.
There's going to be somebody who will say, okay, I'm going to give it to someone and don't disclose who I am, but here's why. Or somebody is going to say, there is no reason, and here's proof there isn't. It's going to come out.
And the sad thing is that Congress, which would normally have some oversight on this and could say, hey, look, brief us. We want to know what this is behind closed doors. Right. Anyway, they're so busy with everything else.
I know.
It's a house fire.
It is.
Yeah.
I just hope, given how erratic things have been lately, that this will be another case of things being erratic and everything will be turned back over to normal.
That does seem to be the way it happens, right?
It does.
Never mind.
It's like, we hate them. Nope, now they're our friends.
You know who we hate now? That Kim Jong-un. He's a bad boy.
Right. We're back to that again.
Yeah, maybe exactly. Maybe some actual problem can occur, and then they can be distracted.
Yeah.
Moving on. Finally, I'm very happy to say, full differential sync is coming to. I don't even know what I'm saying.
What is the sequitur?
Actually, okay. Obviously, this is Mary Jo's thing. I just want to say up front, this is actually interesting and important, and eventually will impact everybody.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Jo has the floor.
I like that you're taking this seriously, because this week.
This is good.
So this week was the Sharepoint conference in Las Vegas. And when I got briefed on what they had like a million announcements. They handed me like all these announcements and they're like, yeah, here's what we're announcing. And I was just like, wow, what am I going to do with this? So I read through all of them. And this one thing is what jumped out at me. OneDrive, differential sync for all file types coming later this year. And we've talked a few times on Windows Weekly about differential sync, which means the ability to sync only parts of files that have changed, not the whole file, which saves you time and money if you're a network administrator. So OneDrive has had some differential sync, but only for Office files up until now. And if you remember, they've been promising differential sync for at least 2, if not 3 years in OneDrive. So we're talking here about OneDrive for Business, just to be clear. And when we say all file types, I mean things like GIFs, JPEGs, zip files, EPUB files. So right now you can't do differential sync on any of those kind of file types. But before the end of this year, they say they will have mastered this and it will be there.
The good news for normal people, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. For
Come on.
non-enterprise, sorry. For individuals, consumers.
Is it going to be in consumer OneDrive as well as?
So they've not promised that, but yeah, of course, right? It's the same. No, I don't mean like this fall, but at some point, of course. They
actually is huge. I'll stand up for
it.
Huge.
Okay, guys, thank you.
When I use when I do backups or I do copying in Linux, for instance, I'll use rsync, which is differential sync, because it saves bandwidth. You only copy stuff that's changed, and of course, normally it's at the file level, but if you can do it at the bit or the byte level, much more efficient.
Yeah, it's like a delta.
And when you're talking big files, like AutoCAD files, right? They're talking about that too. So for some of these files, these things are massive, and to be able to just do the sync with the part that's changed, that's big.
It's great. Yeah,
it's big.
You can't do it, I would guess, with encrypted files. This is one of those features that will not work with anything that's encrypted. So you want the conspiracy theory. I mean, historically, this is why Dropbox and OneDrive and iCloud and all these don't have, know the encryption keys. You can't keep private encryption keys because they have to be able to do differential sync or some other feature. It means you can never have if you want the full benefits of OneDrive, you can't use encryption. Microsoft will always have the access.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Chinese recommend not using encryption.
That's right.
So your sync will be faster.
I'm glad you made the connection. Thank you, Mr. Paranoid here. No, it's gonna be nice. I like it.
Yep. There was some other.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say there was some other SharePoint news that I will throw in here before people melt down or fall asleep on their desk. But SharePoint home sites new announced this week, which is like a new intranet landing page that is going to include the new unified Microsoft Search and stream video and all that. So inside SharePoint, you'll be able to make these really nice landing pages for your organization where you can have different content based on employees' different roles. And it'll be kind of like where you come if you have a centralized dispersal of news and you want to have all your employees look at this page and see different things based on what their role is. And then, I don't know if you guys remember this, but SharePoint Spaces, a year ago, they announced this. We kind of laughed it off at the time and we said, okay, who would do this? It was the idea of using mixed reality in SharePoint to see content using tethered headsets, not the HoloLens, right? So you're in a meeting and you put a headset on and then you can look at all these things that are stored in SharePoint and see them in mixed reality form. So I thought maybe they had abandoned that because we hadn't heard anything about it for a while, but no, they have not. And they're promising more news on SharePoint Spaces coming at Ignite. And they said 1,800 companies have signed up for the private limited preview. So I guess there are people who think this is a thing. There you go. I'm not going to give you all the other SharePoint news because it would take a few more hours, but I'm sure the videos from this conference will be on Microsoft's site or there'll be pointers to them and you can go watch them yourselves.
Yeah. I for one, appreciate SharePoint more now that I use the enterprise version of Office. I was using the home office, but I'm, our OneNotes are SharePoint, right? OneDrive is SharePoint. So I like it. I'm getting it all by myself. By the way, I didn't know this, but there's a Twitch TV channel. They usually have games like, Fortnite and Call of Duty. There's a SharePoint TV channel on Twitch. So what fun is that, huh?
SharePoint is everywhere. This is like an army out there, the SharePoint people. They have their own ways. They have their own traditions. They are a very big community.
Oh, this is interesting. There's a Fortnite ad on the SharePoint TV stream. I guess you can't ever get away from it. This is actually coming from SharePoint TV. Is actually live at the SharePoint conference. Cool. Cool. Coming up next, Dan Holm, Director of Product Marketing, SharePoint and Yammer Microsoft.
You know that guy.
Mm-hmm. Is Yammer still a thing?
Yep. Oh,
yes,
Yammer.
It is.
I didn't even bring that up, but Yammer got a whole bunch of
Thanks,
updates.
Leo.
Sorry.
We could go back and revisit that if you want.
Oh my God. Anyone who thought that Yammer was just going to get sucked right into SharePoint and spat out on the other side is wrong.
Doesn't Teams replace Yammer?
No, Yammer has its own little niche. I was going to say place and help. I decided to say this.
Yep. No, but then you were like, but no, that's SharePoint.
Okay.
So, but, okay. Yammer, which was an acquisition of Microsoft, is basically Slack, which is Teams, which is, why do they
So Yammer is supposed to be like a corporate board. Like if you have a message you want to disperse throughout your company in a certain way, Yammer. How many times can I say Yammer? Yammer.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, that was mean. All right, Cleveland. It's time for the giggity guy to talk about Xbox.
I think I'm Joe actually in this equation.
Are you
but,
Joe?
okay.
Oh, you are Joe. You sound like Joe. You got Joe's baritone.
Right.
Yeah.
Giggity.
I'm the giggity guy.
Yeah. So Microsoft announced right at the beginning of May, or maybe right before the beginning of May, a bunch of games that were going into Xbox Game Pass over the course of the first half of May. obviously we're over that time. And so today Microsoft announced several more games that are coming actually starting tomorrow and then into the very, very beginning of June. And so these things happen over time. But May 23rd, there's a couple of games, May 29th, May 30. The only one that sticks out in my mind is Superhot, which you guys might know from being one of the first big VR games, right? It's been available.
Yeah,
so that's kind of interesting.
My kids are playing that now.
Yeah, Superhot is Superhot, I guess. The other big Xbox thing is that Phil Spencer, who is the head of Xbox, has written an editorial about the need for better behavior on Xbox. And this actually will materially impact me because I'm terrible on Xbox and I actually really enjoy being terrible on Xbox. And by that I mean not being a very good team player in team-based games, but what he wants is just better behavior overall, right? And so if you've ever played games online, you may have noticed there are a lot of jerks online in any gaming network. It's not just Xbox, but this is maybe a potentially alarming development for people who are Xbox fans. And let me explain why that would be, because normally, how could you complain about demanding better behavior of people in any community? The Xbox platform, despite its losing out to PlayStation in the most recent generation, has always been kind of the go-to place for the kind of shooter type titles, what I would call the hardcore type games. And it's not necessarily been a great place for little kids or women or those who are maybe more on the sensitive side, and I think like a lot of people kind of like it for that reason.
It's not for people on the sensitive side.
It's the network for dicks. But so if you think about the new Microsoft and their whole approach and their kind of kumbaya thing, I mean, this actually makes tons of sense, right?
Gaming,
of course,
I have to say, gamers have always been, I
terrible.
don't want to use a D word,
absolutely terrible.
Doofuses, yeah.
Yep.
Terrible.
Yep.
In all platforms.
Yeah, no, I know. But the thing is, the market I just described is, when you think about it, is a very small portion of the overall gaming market, right? And so it's kind of like the car market. There's a lot of like soccer moms who are buying minivans or whatever, normal people. And they're a more casual kind of a gamer. They're not buying consoles. And Microsoft's trying to bring Xbox out of the console, not just to Windows PCs, but to mobile devices and other platforms and into the cloud, obviously. And I think this is part of that. In other words, for Xbox to flourish as a bigger thing than it is now, they need to clean up their act. Mary Jo, you might remember this guy's name.
Steven.
Yes.
Steptoe.
Right. Who, unfortunately, he took his life, didn't he, a couple of years ago?
He passed on, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. He was involved in this in the early days.
He cleaning it up.
It just shows you what a horrible job that is.
Yes. Well, yeah, no, it is. It's terrible. It's like the people who work on Bing or whatever, and they have to look at, child pornography and try to solve these kind of terrible things that can happen on the internet. You can be deeply impacted by this kind of stuff, of course. My approach to online gaming on Xbox is I'd mute everybody, because if I don't, I would be an insane person.
Yeah.
The things that people say to each other, if you think about, like, you would never have conversations in the real world, usually, that are really antagonistic to someone's face. But if it's email or Twitter or a comment section or a website or apparently an online gaming service, those kind of things just flow freely. Like, it's just a completely different kind of interaction. And I think what Phil Spencer is calling for is kind of a saner, more polite, better environment. Right. So, yeah, I will see. But I mean, I do think he makes a point. For Xbox Live to be, or Xbox to be broadly popular, it has to kind of address
it. I agree. I mean,
I know.
Yeah.
I know. How do you do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. All I'm saying is, as long as I'm out there, it's going to be hard. That's you're not going to do it.
Paul's the problem. Everybody knows that.
Set up the claymores and blowing up my own teammates. I'm not good. Not good for Xbox.
No, and that's why you go on the Xbox. You get out. You blow off the steam.
That's right.
You get out of those
guy my own
poisons.
team cuts me off. I'm gonna,
it's not gonna the poisons out. That's right. That's why we game.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there, but it's one of those things. You go through the different reactions. My initial reaction was like, yeah, right, and then I was like, actually, I don't know how they're going to do it, but
I applaud it.
It is necessary for this thing to escape out of what is essentially a niche kind of community. Like for this to be a big deal broadly, they're going to have to clean this up. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I wonder if this is just part of the gaming culture. I mean,
I know. I wonder that too.
Well, but remember, when you say gaming culture, we're talking about a very specific group of people. I think what they want to do is
gaming
make
culture.
They want to take Xbox to be a more broad entertainment brand, and that means just normal people have to be part of it. And normal people would never want to be part of this Xbox thing that I'm seeing.
Would normal people see the chat? Would they see the stuff that's going on? I mean,
well, you hear it. So it's not PC-based gaming where people are typically typing in. You don't see like a console with text, right?
But I mean, you're not going to. If I say, I want to go down, I want to play Minecraft on my Xbox, I'm not going to hear back talk. It's only in Call of Duty and Fortnite and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Oh, I can assure you it is in there. Yeah.
And you don't have to. You could mute it. You don't have to hear it.
I do mute it.
Is it on? Is it on by default though?
Yeah.
Well, that's a simple switch. Make it off by default.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you think the reason they're doing this is they keep saying they want to make gaming a more attractive platform to everyone. So for me, that's one of the biggest turnoffs of gaming is that whole back talk thing. You know.
Sure.
I mean, if you want more women in it, I'm not saying every woman wouldn't want that or would want that.
Some women like to trash talk.
Yeah.
Meet my wife.
Yeah.
But
no, but sure. I'm sure. By the way, it absolutely is worse for women. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. But there's plenty of people. If you want to broaden gaming, I don't know if the Xbox is the platform for that. I know they'd like it to be.
Yeah.
And that's what they're saying basically is if we're going to make it be, we're going to have to do something about that.
It's aspirational, Leo.
But if you're, Mary Jo wouldn't be playing Fortnite or Call of Duty.
I probably would not.
No, you'd be playing you'd be playing a nice indie game.
Cuphead.
Unraveled or Cuphead. There's none of that on Cuphead, is there? You could play teams.
There's not.
Trash talk on Cuphead.
Trash
That would
talk
be
on
funny.
Cuphead. No, but I bet there's a lot of swearing because that game is really hard.
I swear like a sailor when I'm playing that game. Good.
I don't hear anybody in Call of Duty, but I enjoy it. I can tell when I get a particularly good kill. What I'll see is the guy's name comes up because that means he's talking.
Yeah.
Then the little speaker icon goes like this, and he's like. So I still kind of get to enjoy it. But.
Yeah. It's interesting. I guess, a number of our chatters even say that's one of the reasons I don't like social gaming.
Yeah.
I don't want to play with those people. Yeah, I don't blame them. And it's
it's a very special thing. If you can find people who are like to do this correctly, and it's like a team-based experience of some kind where you're actually working together, you're talking to each other.
Right? That's the issue.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But
so you can play Call of Duty muted, because you're playing solo.
Right.
But if you were going to play at a squad, you'd have to unmute. That's really the problem.
If it was a true squad-based game where there's some sort of objective where you all have to work together to make it happen, yes. Right. Yeah, you'd have to have the microphone on.
I see the problem.
But one guy will get in there and screw it up. You'll have that one loser.
Leroy Jenkins. It's always a Leroy.
Yep.
All right, let's take a little break, and when we come back, the back of the book, the picks of the week, the tips, and a little beer. But I'm going to give you my pick for the pick of the week. It is a podcast. Hard to believe. I like to plug other people's podcasts, but I do when they give me money. And actually, this is a great podcast. I listen to it. It's called Behind the Tech. It's with Microsoft CTO Kevin Scott. He is, what's fun is Kevin came to Microsoft from LinkedIn. Before that, he was at Google, so he knows everybody. In fact, one of my favorite episodes, the most recent, with Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn. So it's, kind of a reunion, Kevin and Reid. They talk about scaling massively. Reid's new book is about, blitz scaling? Valuable companies, hyper competition, the secrets to blitz scaling, important entrepreneurial tips. Other shows include Jaron Lanier, the father of virtual reality, who now says technology is bad for humans and other living things. I really haven't listened to this. I want to listen to this. Danielle Feinberg, she's the computer scientist at Pixar, who's responsible for lighting and other stuff. There's only 9 episodes so far, so you're not behind. You can catch up. It is fantastic. They do a nice job of the show. They have a transcript. And guess who's the co-host? Oh, we love Christina Warren. She's a regular on our shows, too. So Kevin Scott, Christina Warren, Behind the Tech. He talks to some of the greatest geeks. You'll hear what inspired their guests to author languages, build the tools that made an impact on the lives of developers and engineers today. If you're new to tech, it's a history of the tech industry. If you're as old as Kevin and I are, it's just going to be a great trip down memory lane. Behind the Tech. Subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Google Play Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Libsyn. Use any podcast app, you'll be able to get it. Behind the Tech with Kevin Scott. What a great idea for a show. Kevin's a smart, fun, interesting guy, and you're going to love it. And look at the most recent ones. They're just fantastic. Mixed reality, betting on Bitcoin, computer scientist from Pixar. Love it. Andrew Ng, who's a leader in AI. So every subject you'd be interested in. All right, Paul Thurrott. Why don't we start with you and your tip of the week?
Yes, what do we have? So Microsoft is having a big Xbox backward compatibility sale. So everything that's in the backward compatibility program, either OG Xbox or Xbox 360, has been updated to work on the Xbox One. Some of them have even been Xbox One X. What's the word? I just forgot the word. Have been updated, to look better on Xbox One X enhanced. There it is. Up to 75% off, depending on the title. A bunch of the Call of Duty games are in there. I actually bought an Xbox 360 game I loved at the time. I can't play it until I get home, but I'm curious to see if I like it as much. It was called Battlefield Brothers in Arms, and it's kind of like it's a first-person shooter, World War II era, but there's like a whole comedy thing to it. And I remember really enjoying it at the time, so we'll see if it stands up. But it was $5. I mean, can't beat that. So Xbox.com or Microsoft Store, Microsoft Store website, you'll be able to see the Xbox backward compatibility listings. And I think there's 240-ish games in there, all on sale. So check that out. That's good stuff. Google released the results this week of a year-long study that they had done in conjunction with two other organizations. I think one of them was educational, about account security. And they had written something some months back about here are the 5 top things we think you should do to secure your account. One of them had to do with having just a recovery phone number. And that was shown to be like the single greatest thing you can do to secure your online account. They said if you do that,
80%
you will have
something, right?
Yeah, it's like 100% of automated bots, 99% of bulk phishing attacks, and 66% of targeted attacks were blocked just by having a recovery phone number. But you should check out that Google. Let's see, how would you find that?
You should also do it in case you lose your password or forget it. I get calls from people on the radio show. What do I do? I forgot my password. Well, I'm glad you sent up a secondary recovery email and phone number, right?
Yeah, you got to have multiple ways to do it, like the second factor, right? So I switched.
One woman went to. She lived in Irvine. She went to the Google offices in Irvine and pounded on the door.
Awesome. Did they help her?
No, nobody even came to the door. It's like, stay open the door. There's a crazy lady out there.
Oh, boy.
So you should always have backups for this kind of stuff, right? So if you use your phone, if you have like an authenticator app, or if you have an Android phone, you can do that kind of Google prompt thing that comes up. That's great. But if you don't have your phone, or you change phones, which is what happens to me all the time, you got to be able to be reached by email, by a phone number. You can get an SMS style. You got to set up all that stuff. So Google has a really good blog post about the top 5 things you can do.
Yes.
And together, this stuff blocks. I mean, it's really close to 90% or 100% if you do all this stuff. Like a 2-factor or a 2-step verification prompt in your phone is like 199 or 90% of attacks, depending on the type of attacks, get blocked just by having that.
Yep.
And this is where we define this. I wrote about it on my site, but it's on the Google blog. So if you go to blog.google.com, you'll find it. It's 5 things you can do to stay safe online. It's just good advice. It's smart. It works for Microsoft accounts as well.
Must read. Yep.
Yeah, it's just a good one. And then AppPick, I got a couple of things for AppPick. I had done kind of an email experiment over the last half of last year and then into this year because Google was shutting down Inbox, and it was so upset me. I won't go through the whole story, but was trying to find some acceptable, alternative to Inbox. And as part of this investigation that I did, I realized that by consolidating my email in the cloud, I was actually missing emails. I suspected some kind of combination of spam detection, whatever it was. But once I just kept my email in all the individual accounts, I actually got all my email. So I thought at that time, I was like, well, maybe I could consolidate the email in the client, right? Use some client, like Outlook Mobile, for example, configure all 3 accounts in the client. All the email will come into the one place. It actually stays up in all the individual clouds, but I can see it in one place. And that works great. But the thing I've been stuck on is finding an email client for Windows that's any good. And I finally was like, look, I just got to get on with life. I'm going to use this Windows 10 Mail app. And it's just like so terrible. Like, I hate this app so much. I've been basically hating myself for the past 2 or 3 months, maybe longer, using this app. And what finally put me over the edge was multiple instances in a row. And a lot of it was travel related, where I needed to use the search function to find a particular email. And this app is worthless for that. And I found myself going back to the web of the whatever, gmail.com or outlook.com, whatever, and just searching from there. And then every time it comes right up, and I'm like, okay, I can't, this is completely unacceptable. So for right now, what I'm trying, this is just an experiment right now, but I really do like this. If you used Inbox and you miss it, I might have mentioned this one before. There's a browser plugin. It works in the new Edge. It works in Chrome, obviously. I'm sure it works elsewhere, but it's called Simplify. And it was written by the guy who created Inbox. And what it does is it makes Gmail look and work a lot more like Inbox. It's not perfect, but it really simplifies the interface a lot. And it's pretty good. Like I could almost imagine doing this. So it's just something to look for. If you do use Gmail, you want the web interface, look at Simplify. It's a neat browser plugin. And then the other one is another app I actually use a lot is the Your Phone Companion app on Android. This is the Android companion, literally, to the Your Phone app that's on Windows 10. Microsoft just updated this to support cellular sync, which is important because when this app was first released, in order for you to see everything on your phone from your computer, you had to be on the same Wi-Fi network. And then eventually they updated the app so that you could just be on Wi-Fi. It didn't have to be the same network, but as long as you were, you could get your text messages and your photos from your computer. But now they're making it work over cellular if you enable it, because obviously it might use some data. So some people might not want to enable it. But if you want it to work that way, what that means is you could, your phone could be just connected to cellular and your computer could be connected to your home network, your work network, whatever. And it's just going to sync. So it's kind of less of a proximity type thing. So that's pretty cool. So if you use that feature, and it's great, I mean, it works great, you have that option if you want to enable it. So that's available now.
Nice. Very good, Mr. Thurrott. I now turn and hand the talking stick to Mary Jo Cleveland for her enterprise pick of the week.
My enterprise pick is something called the Azure Active Directory Banned Password List.
Ooh.
That's a mouthful.
I love the name. What does it do?
So what this does, it's a feature of Azure Active Directory, but it also can be used with on-premises Active Directory, and it helps organizations avoid commonly guessed passwords. It also... I'm reading from something somebody sent me. It also does work with proprietary password filters that your organization might have implemented. So you know how there are certain passwords your company knows are common and they don't want you to use? Microsoft knows those passwords too. And this tool is meant to help you weed those out and avoid them being used in your company at all. So the way you can find out more about this is just do a search for Azure Active Directory Banned Password List. And you'll see some Microsoft documentation, a couple articles about it. It just went live and was made generally available in April of this year, I believe. I want to say thanks to Microsoft's Mark Morozinski, who is at Mark Morrow on Twitter, who gave me the tip about this.
Very cool. I always like to look at bad passwords.
Yeah.
It's always fun. It's always amazing how bad they can be.
I know.
Yeah.
It is. It's crazy what people still use as passwords.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, come on. You know that's not like a safe password.
It's funny you said that. My password is literally, it's crazy what people still use as password.
That would be a perfect password. Not really.
Nobody would ever use it. Yeah. Code name of the week.
So I'm using code name in quotes here because this is actually a product name, but it's a product name I don't think a lot of people know. And so if you hear about it, now you'll know what it is. It's called Windows 10 EVD. So you've heard of Windows 10 Virtual Desktop, WVD. So there's also a thing called EVD, which I didn't realize until this week. And the reason I found out about it was Citrix had their big Synergy conference, and they're one of Microsoft's big partners around virtual desktop. So remember when Microsoft introduced the virtual desktop, they said, not only is it going to let you run apps virtually, but it's also going to let you have multi-user Windows sessions. They never really explained how that was going to work, but it turns out there is a special version of Windows 10 that is only going to be used for this that's called Windows 10 EVD. And the way you'll get this is through Microsoft or through cloud solution providers like Citrix. And the catch here is if you're using Windows 10 EVD, the virtual machines where EVD is installed must be hosted on Azure. So that keeps it in the Azure service family. But in case you hear about this thing, Windows 10 Enterprise Virtual Desktop, it is a special dedicated version of Windows 10 that won't be for sale other than through this cloud solution provider method. And it's not going to be like something that's packaged or something you can go and buy from Microsoft, I don't believe, but that's what EVD is.
I mean, is there?
I don't think it does. I think it'll be part of the Windows Virtual Desktop offering, is my understanding.
It'll come with a service that you're going to buy.
I think so. Yeah. But I never knew what it was. I saw the initials popping up. I'm like, what's that? I know what WVD is, but what's EVD? Now I know. And now you know.
Well, this comes in the aftermath. Remember years ago, it was like a streaming gaming company. I can't remember the name, but one of the things they offered was Windows.
Yeah, that was illegal, right?
Yeah,
was that on live?
Yeah. They got in trouble with Microsoft. They said, well, wait a minute. Do people have licenses for the versions of Windows they're using? And so this is a legit way to do it.
It is.
Let's have a beer.
Okay.
Paul's in Miami.
Let's have a beer inspired by Paul's trip to Miami.
Yeah.
Is it good Zephyr Mills spring water?
The best.
It is not.
Highly recommended by Paul Thurrott.
No, in fact, it's a beer from Brooklyn, Evil Twin, and their beer's name is Miami's Finest.
This is the weirdest recipe I've ever heard.
It is. So there's a category of beers now called pastry stouts. They're usually imperial stouts that either use dessert-like items in them or taste like them.
Oh, boy.
And so this beer is, quote, conditioned on cave-matured coffee sap, macaroon, extra special coconut, and heritage Scandinavian vanilla beans.
What the hell?
Oh my God.
So a lot of that is meant to be ironic because Evil Twin loves making fun of hipsters.
Okay, I was going to say, I have never heard anything as
what is
hipster.
coffee sap?
Exactly. So what I can tell you about this beer, 15.5.
Paul is on the can, I might add.
Yeah, there's Paul right there on the can. Looks just like him. 15.5% people. So drink cautiously on this one. But if you like big stouts that are sweet and taste like dessert, you will like Miami's Finest.
I'm guessing this is not keto in any form or form.
No.
Not keto at all.
I think the notion of like healthy beer is very much like clean oil or clean coal or whatever.
Yeah.
Healthy beer is the clean coal for drinkers.
It is.
But it does look good.
Yeah.
Well, friends, sad to say we have come to the end of this program. This has been a lot of fun. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. You find Paul and his new Windows Field Guide, Windows 10 Field Guide, updated soon. If you bought it now, would you get the 1903 updates?
Yeah, everyone who bought it will get all the updates.
Nice.
Or, I mean, you have to actually download the update.
Yeah, it doesn't magically appear.
Right. I don't do differential sync. You have to go get it.
It's much more like really Azure Spatial Anchors than anything else.
It is.
You have to go down the street.
It's actually
to see it.
exactly like that.
Yeah. That's leanpub.com is the address for that. Paul, of course, makes his internet presence at Thurrott.com, THURRO good.com. Mary Jo Foley is at allaboutmicrosoft.com, her fantastic Microsoft blog at ZDNet. And together they show up here like a miracle every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. You should, too. You could watch live or listen live at twit.tv/live if you're doing that. Hang in the chat room. Great people. They're fun. They're all watching
live.
On
Xbox. Not like those jerks on Xbox.
None of that Xbox trash talk in our chat room. Look, see, Goucham says, the field guide is awesome. I keep a copy on my phone. Great show, says Chickenhead21. Thank you, Mary Jo, Leo, and Paul. And then somebody's talking about Haagen-Dazs with spirits in it. So that's I don't know where that comes from.
Probably from the beer pick.
You could either buy a beer that tastes like a dessert, or a dessert that tastes like beer. Which way would you go, right?
Yeah.
I think they go together.
Hey,
they do.
Taste made in heaven. Mm-hmm. If you can't listen or watch live, you can always get on-demand copies of everything we do. That's kind of what makes it a podcast, as it turns out. If you go to twit.tv/WW or go to YouTube, or best thing to do, fire up your podcast application and subscribe so you get it automatically every Wednesday the minute it's available. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thank you, Paul and Mary Jo. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.